Chapter 217. Long Jie glared at him and said in annoyance, "I was just teasing you." After speaking, Long Jie helped him up from the bed and wrapped him in a thick jacket. After the couple arrived downstairs, Lu Che suddenly walked down the steps and crouched down. "Come on up." Although it was already early in the morning and there weren't many people on the streets, Long Jie still looked around. Forget it? Although she said this, her body was honest as she climbed onto Lu Che's back. Lu Che couldn't handle the weight and almost fell to the ground. Long Jie was so shocked that she quickly stood up. "Are you okay?" Lu Che couldn't help but laugh as he once again crouched down at the bottom of the steps. "Hurry, come on up." Long Jie couldn't help but let out a laugh as she climbed onto Lu Che's back again. This time, Lu Che walked steadily, even though it still didn't look like it was easy. "You can put me down at the front. I'll take a taxi home," Long Jie said as she pointed to a street lamp. "Why would you want to go home? Stay at my place." Lu Che carried Long Jie across the street. "Isn't that a little inconvenient?" Long Jie said, but she was actually laughing on the inside. Although opportunities like this didn't come by often, at this moment, being on this man's back made her heart feel warm and at ease. At the same time, she also felt nostalgic and reluctant to leave. "Hey, this hospital is only 3 minutes away from my house. How did you manage to carry me for over 10 minutes? Lu Che changed the topic. Of course, when it came to accommodation, he would make his own decisions. "I am, after all, a woman." Before the word woman could leave her mouth, Long Jie suddenly reminded, "Look at the road. Look at the road." Lu Che turned his head once and ended up knocking into a lamppost. Long Jie fell backwards onto the snow with Lu Che lying between her legs. Lu Che was stunned for a moment. He realized their position was quite embarrassing, so he immediately stood up and pulled Long Jie up. Long Jie immediately covered her burning hot face, thinking to herself, if only the road was a little longer. Lu Che held onto Long Jie's hand without turning back. Long Jie enjoyed the feeling of being held onto by the person she liked as her thoughts ran wild the entire way. She knew, although she was an insignificant person had their own highlights. If it was Tongning and Boss, there would definitely be a crowd of onlookers. Not long after, the couple arrived at Lu Che's apartment. As there was only one bedroom, Lu Che gave the bed to Long Jie. However, Long Jie said, "Since we're both too embarrassed to sleep on the bed, let's both sleep on the sofa. You can take that one, and I'll take this one." Lu Che thought about it, and felt it made sense. So, after taking the medicine, he collapsed and fell into a deep sleep. It was like he had no idea that there was a woman in front of him. Long Jie sat up and watched as Lu Che rested peacefully. She felt it was a shame to waste such a beautiful night, but was she really brave enough to say that she liked Lu Che? In a daze, Long Jie also fell to the ground. However, her sleeping position wasn't very good. In the darkness, a tall figure helplessly walked to her side, bent down, and carefully tucked her in. However, Long Jie was in a deep sleep, so she had no idea someone had covered her with a blanket. The next morning, Tongning was packing her luggage at home when she received a phone call from Feng Yu. He asked her to attend a private gathering to get to know some of Hai Rui's most popular artists. "I've already spoken to the president about this matter, and he has agreed." Tongning originally didn't like crowds, but since Feng Yu had asked and it was Mo Ting's idea, Tongning couldn't find a reason to reject. So, she nodded her head and agreed. She needed to integrate into this big family and make a few more friends. So, 6 p.m. that night, she and Long Jie appeared at a secretive high-class club. To make sure she didn't feel awkward, Feng Yu waited for her at the entrance and led her into the high-class reception. Inside the luxurious hall, pleasant classical music echoed through the air. Under the gorgeous chandeliers, a famous singer was playing the piano. Tongning took a closer look and noticed most of the people attending the reception were currently on television. They were either famous film and television stars or popular singers. The only person accompanying her was the international supermodel, Hua Jingjing. She was wearing a long silver dress as she sat elegantly drinking champagne. Afterwards, Feng Yu led Tongning over to the man playing the piano. He smiled and said, "Feng Ge, let me introduce you. This is Tongning." Although Tongning rarely sang, She was well aware of the status the man in front of her had in the pop music industry. 10 years ago, his name had already spread far and wide, and he had created countless legends on the charts. 10 years later, he was still far behind the younger generation. He was a famous evergreen in the music industry. Tongning was not shy at all. As the man sized her up, she politely greeted, "Nice to meet you. Phone good? Okay, let's have more gatherings from now on. If you like to sing, I can teach you." "Thank you, Phone go." Tongning has arrived. Everyone present immediately approached with a glass of wine in their hands and greeted Tongning. Fong Yu patiently introduced himself until Tongning was able to blend in. In the end, Tongning sat down beside Hua Jingjing. In reality, they had already compared their abilities a long time ago. But Hua Jingjing had been famous for a long time and her stage presence was unique, so she had her own advantages. She turned sideways and smiled at Tongning. "You don't like events like this, do you?" "Uh-huh, I'm not used to it yet." "You'll get used to it after a few more times. Hai Rue is a place that gathers the best people in the industry," Hua Jingjing said as she drank. In the end, she was a little tipsy, so she asked, "Who is your manager?" "What's your manager?" I don't know yet," Tongning replied honestly. "I heard you were flying to Italy the day after tomorrow for the sake of a watch endorsement. But I heard Star King is also fighting for it," Hua Jingjing explained. "I know you were previously blacklisted by Star King, but since you've joined Hai Rue, there will be a lot of battles between you and Star King. You need to be careful." Tongning nodded her head and looked at Hua Jingjing in seriousness. "Fighting for resources is inevitable, but Hai Rue has never lost before. I hope you can continue to win. Of course, this will depend on whether your manager has the ability to do so." Tongning knew the higher up she went, the crueler it was. But apart from nodding her head, she didn't know what else to say. After all, she didn't even know who her manager was yet. The two chatted for a while before Fong Yu turned to the crowd and said mysteriously, "Do you guys know that the president will be attending tonight?" Chapter 218. As soon as everyone heard this, their faces lit up with excitement. Some of the artists even started clapping and whistling. Although they worked in the same agency, because Mo Ting had his own private elevator, the artists didn't have many chances to actually see him, let alone at a private event. Mo Ting was like a legend in their hearts, more dazzling than any singer or movie star. Hua Jingjing subconsciously scanned Tongning from head to toe. She noticed even a popular singer like Feng Gu couldn't help but reveal a look of excitement upon hearing that Mo Ting was coming. Tongning was the only exception. Although she was known to be quiet, the expression on her face made Hua Jingjing lower her head and smile. "You seem to be quite close to President Mo?" "Sort of." Tongning nodded in acknowledgement. Within the industry, there aren't many people that are close to President Mo. His lifestyle doesn't seem like one from the entertainment industry, Hua Jingjing said with a deeper meaning. She then lowered her head and gently took a sip from the wine glass in her hand. Tongning let out a gentle laugh. She didn't know why, but she couldn't put up her guard around Hua Jingjing. It was like Hua Jingjing had an aura that was very similar to hers. It made her feel a sense of familiarity. Roughly 10 minutes later, a commotion broke out in the hall. Tongning spotted Mo Ting amongst the crowd of artists. He was tall, strong, and brimming with energy. He was still wearing the same black lapel suit he wore before leaving the house. However, at this moment, Tongning wasn't sure if it was because she had been drinking, but all she could think about was Mo Ting's strong physique without any clothes on. So, she blushed as she stared at Mo Ting amongst the crowd. Her eyes burned with passion. It was as if she wanted to pierce a hole through his body. Mo Ting greeted each of the artists present one by one before looking for Tongning. As his gaze met with her fiery gaze, Mo Ting held back his laughter and held back the urge to hug her. It was as if he was hinting for her to drink less. Tongning let out a gentle laugh as she looked down at her wine glass and gently nodded her head. "Tongning, come over here." Fong Yu noticed Tongning had not moved, so he beckoned her over. Tongning held onto her wine glass and obediently walked over to Fong Yu's side. She then looked at Mo Ting. "Let me propose a toast to President Mo." Tongning did not hold back as she asked straightforwardly, "I wonder if I would have the honor?" Imo Ting received the wine glass from the waiter and gently clinked glasses with Tongning. Their actions were in sync, and the way they drank was the same. If they hadn't known each other for a long time, it was impossible for them to have such chemistry. Hua Jingjing seemed to have understood something and suddenly chuckled. It was hard to find anyone present who didn't suspect their tacit actions. To be able to make it to the top of the industry, one's EQ and IQ were not too low. If he still couldn't understand, then they didn't deserve to be the cream of the crop. From this, Fang Yu understood. If Imo Ting had previously said he wanted to be Tongning's manager, he was still doubtful. But now, Imo Ting, who never attended private gatherings, appeared in front of everyone because of Tongning. Didn't this mean something? Of course, the boss knew that everyone would notice something was off, but he didn't hide it. He was secretly telling everyone to take care of his people. Everyone had a tacit understanding. Actually, they weren't surprised at all, even though some of them were younger than Tongning. But since she had joined Hai Rui, she was their junior. So, of course, they had to take good care of her. After the toast, Imo Ting and a few other popular film stars began to discuss the script. Imo Ting had a good eye for talent. As long as he had his eyes on a film, it would definitely do well in the box office and would never fail. So, now that the opportunity had arrived, everyone had to take advantage of it. Tongning returned to her seat beside Hua Jingjing. Listening to the soothing music, her tense nerves slowly relaxed. "Don't go public," Hua Jingjing suddenly said from beside her. "Huh. Don't go public with your relationship with President Imo," Hua Jingjing suggested in seriousness. "Otherwise, you will no longer have a private life to speak of. The reporters will have their eyes on you at all times. In fact, they may even do it a few times a week." Tongning was a little surprised, but she quickly smiled. "Let me tell you a story." Hua Jingjing found a comfortable spot and slowly began. 10 years ago, there was a model that came from a humble background, but she fell in love with a famous director. They fearlessly walked side by side for many years. Just as the female model became a supermodel, they went public with their relationship. In the end, they moved in together and got married. But not long after, the media revealed that the director was impotent. Because of these 3 words, the director broke down. From then on, he couldn't recover. As for this female model, because her husband's dignity was trampled on and she couldn't prove his innocence, the media claimed that she was a test tube baby. In the end, she suffered a miscarriage and committed suicide. That woman was my sister, Hua Yingying. The media must be scary. After hearing this, Tongning's heart was filled with emotions. Fame had always been a double-edged sword. Don't worry, since President Imo dared to let us know, he obviously has a plan. Actually, he wants you to be mentally prepared. If your relationship goes public, your life will definitely be turned upside down. I know. I've always known. Tongning nodded her head in seriousness. But the way she looked at Imo Ting was filled with trust and determination. "We will help you because Hai Rui has given us a lot of warmth." At that time, Tongning didn't really understand who Hua Jingjing was referring to. She simply felt that if there was a place in the entertainment industry that was pure, then Hai Rui had achieved it. Imo Ting seemed to have finished speaking as he suddenly placed his gaze on Tongning. His gentle gaze made Tongning feel like she was bathing in the moonlight. Tongning had a little too much to drink. As she spoke to Hua Jingjing, she continuously downed a few more glasses. By the time Imo Ting looked at her for the 5th or 6th time, she was already lying unconscious on the table. Seeing this, Imo Ting stood up from the crowd, walked over to Tongning, and placed his arm around her shoulder. Feeling the familiar warmth, Tongning immediately sat up, wrapped her arms around Imo Ting's waist, and rubbed her head against his stomach. This scene was witnessed by everyone. Although their eyes were wide open, they were no longer surprised. From now on, thanks to Tongning, he would be able to interact with Boss more often. It seemed he needed to treat her better. Imo Ting had no choice but to carry Tongning in his arms. At this moment, he was no longer the boss that stood above everyone. He was simply the husband of a drunkard. Chapter 219. This is the first time I felt Boss is like an ordinary person. President Fong, Did you invite the two of them to show off their affection today? I suddenly remembered something. The LM jewelry commercial. President Mo is the Backview Dream Man, right? You've only just realized. In that case, you must have seen Feng Kai's interview with Tongning. Everyone was immersed in their memories as they suddenly remembered Tongning telling the host that she was already married. Married to the most powerful man in the industry. At first, everyone thought she was joking. But who would have thought everything she said was the truth? However, even though they knew it was the truth, they couldn't deny Tongning's hard work. Even after all this time, Emoting still hadn't stepped in to resolve the issue. It was clear to see she had truly relied on her own abilities. As for how professional she was, everyone present had personally witnessed it. Above all, everyone had signed a confidentiality agreement with Hai Rue. Even if they knew the inside story of the industry, they couldn't reveal it to the public. If it concerned themselves, Feng Yu would naturally step in to resolve it for them. But if it concerned someone else, they better keep their mouth shut because it had nothing to do with them. After Emo Ting escorted Tongning out of the club, they headed straight home and placed her on the bed. Tongning suddenly opened her sleepy eyes and sat up, hooking her arms around Emo Ting's neck. It's been a long time since I've been this happy. Emo Ting understood what she was referring to. Along the way, she had already experienced too much scheming. It had been a long time since Tongning had experienced the feeling of having friends. There was no suspicion or scheming, there was only relaxation and trust. So, she allowed herself to get drunk. I should have dragged you over to Hai Rue a long time ago. Tongning shook her head as she buried her head in Emo Ting's neck. Without the experience from before, I wouldn't have been able to get the equality I have today. I believe God has trained me because he has left the best for me to come. Like you. Emo Ting gently stroked Tongning's cheek and said gently, you need to fly to Italy tomorrow. It's time for you to get some rest. Let me hug you a little longer. I won't be able to see you for a few more days. Emo Ting did not say a word as he allowed her to hug him. The couple continued to hug each other tightly. After quite some time, Tongning finally said in a choked-up voice, I don't have a home, so you give me one. I don't have a career, so you support my career. I don't have friends, so you find me a bunch of friends. How can you treat me so well? Emo Ting did not respond. He knew, on the surface, Tongning appeared strong and seemed like she didn't need anything, but in reality, her sense of security was just a hard shell. Because you need? I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. I'm the one who loves you the most in the world. There won't be another one like me in the future. She bit Emo Ting forcefully and gently kissed the bite mark she had left on his cheek. Can I sleep now? Okay. Tongning nodded her head and collapsed. Do you want to take a shower first? My stomach hurts. I want to wash it tomorrow. Emo Ting did not say anything. He was 100% lenient towards drunkards. Some people might not understand how someone could put in so much effort without ever feeling tired. In reality, the reasoning was simple. It was because you truly loved her and couldn't bear to see anything bad happen to her. If she was unhappy, angry, sad, or hurt, it was all your fault. This was what it meant to put in 100% effort. The next morning, Longjie and Tongning waited at the airport for their flight. After the incident with Han Shiner, the media's attitude towards Tongning was a lot gentler and more polite. Even when they bumped into each other at the airport, they didn't speak to her as casually as before. After all, Hai Rue's PR wasn't like Chung Tian's, where they were just there for show. After dealing with the reporters, Tongning sat in the departure lounge holding her head in discomfort. Seeing this, Longjie immediately handed her some medicine and warm water. Who told you to drink so much last night? You've made boss worry. However, you're going to have a hangover. Did you know? You're finally back to how you used to be? What? You're more human. Longjie sighed. She then sat down beside her and stretched out her legs as she explained. From the moment Han Yufan betrayed you, you've been facing the outside world with a cold attitude. Apart from boss, you've been guarding against everyone, and you've been trying to control everything in your own hands. Although I like that side of Tongning as a friend, I feel like you've been holding on too much. Isn't it better like this? Tongning couldn't help but admit this was all because of the rise in status that gave her confidence. Plus, Joining Hai gave her a sense of security. Have you still not been able to contact your manager? Fang Yu told me that the manager will be meeting with us at Excalibur Q's interview venue tomorrow. Long Jie replied casually, he should be in Italy on a business trip. Tongning leaned against Long Jie's shoulder and was about to close her eyes to get some rest when a commotion suddenly came from the departure lounge. Long Jie sat up and glanced at the commotion before saying to Tongning, "That's Star King's model, Qin Yu." Hearing the words Star King, Tongning's eyes suddenly opened and she sat up straight. As she watched the model called Qin Yu enter the VIP lounge, their eyes met for a moment before quickly looking away. Qin Yu didn't travel like Tongning did. Apart from bodyguards, assistants, manager, and a makeup artist, she was accompanied by 7 to 8 other people. As soon as the staff saw Tongning's simple appearance, they didn't think highly of her status in Hai Rui. A model that had previously been blacklisted by Star King, now that she was at an enemy agency, did she think she could make a name for herself? It seems Star King's endorsement deal with Excalibur Q is a must. It's still too early to be talking about this. Long Jie watched as Tongning spoke calmly. She liked how confident she was when it came to her profession. Tongning remembered Hua Jingjing's words. Whenever Hai Rui and Star King competed for resources, they had never lost. So, when it came to her, there was no reason to let Star King win. Not to mention, Star King had blacklisted her for many years. Qin Yu's people originally wanted to bully Tongning by occupying the seat next to her. But Tongning's bodyguards immediately entered the lounge and stood behind Tongning. Not one more, not one less. There were 4 top-notch American bodyguards. Tongning was low-key, but it didn't mean she was easy to provoke. Qin Yu and her assistant glanced at Tongning and did not dare to provoke her any further. All they could do was step back and grit their teeth. Star King's overall power was, of course, no match for Hai Rui, but they were a professional agency that trained their models. Once upon a time, Star King was also Tongning's dream, but now, she thought defeating Imperial Star was more meaningful than joining Imperial Star. Chapter 220. At the same time, Ting set off for Milan. However, just as he was about to leave Hai Rui, he was held back by Lu Che. "President, there is a problem with our collaboration with Hong Xian Film and Television. The other party's CEO is still online." As he spoke, Lu Che handed over his phone. This was a project worth a few $100 million. Ting lifted his wrist to look at the time and accepted the phone from Lu Che. But this wasn't as simple as a phone call. Hai Rui had invested in the project, so now that there was a problem with the production, both parties needed to meet in person to discuss it. Ting pondered for a moment before turning around to return to Hai Rui. As he walked back, he said to Lu Che, "Get Fang Yu to immediately fly to Milan and help Tongning secure the endorsement deal for Excalibur Q." But Excalibur Q is one of the top 10 luxury brands in the world. Letting Fang Yu handle it is not enough for the madam. Lu Che followed behind Ting worriedly. This was one of the problems Tongning faced after joining Hai Rui. If Ting wanted to stay by Tongning's side at all times, he would need to make a huge sacrifice. But Tongning was already under his flag. No matter who he handed her over to, he couldn't be at ease. "If he can't complete it, tell him to call me." After hearing these instructions, Lu Che immediately rushed downstairs and relayed Ting's instructions to Fang Yu. Fang Yu immediately made time to fly to Italy an hour after Tongning. After an 11-hour flight, Tongning arrived in Milan at 1 p.m. Long Jie dragged a large suitcase and followed behind Tongning. The warm rays of the sun shone down on them, making them feel especially refreshed. Afterwards, they checked into the hotel arranged by the agency. Long Jie immediately gave Lu Che a phone call asking about his upcoming work arrangements and any updates on her manager. But as Lu Che picked up the phone, he noticed Ting was in the middle of a meeting with Hong Xian CEO. He immediately comforted Long Jie. "The work arrangements have already been sent to the madam's email. As for the manager, she will be arriving shortly. I'm in a meeting now, so I won't say much." Long Jie put down her phone and blinked a few times. She suddenly felt a little strange. The model had already started work, yet she didn't even know who her manager was. How could they cooperate like this? Tongning sat uncomfortably on the edge of the bed. Seeing Long Jie's furrowed brows, she asked naturally, "What's wrong? Who is this agent? Why are you acting so mysterious?" Tongning endured the discomfort in her stomach as she leaned against the headboard to read up on Excalibur Q. Seeing her pale face, Long Jie couldn't help but place her hands on her hips worriedly. "Can you work like this?" "I'm fine," Tongning said as she held onto her burning stomach. "In the future, let boss keep an eye on you. If you can't drink, don't drink. Did boss give you any hangover soup?" "Yes, I drank it as soon as I woke up this morning." Tongning nodded. "Tongning, this is your first event since joining Hyrule. Plus, you will be competing with Star King. Although I don't want to put pressure on you, I'm sure you know how important this endorsement is to you." "I know." Tongning nodded gently. "Then you rest for a while. I'll look at the work arrangements first." Long Jie pulled out her laptop and watched over Tongning. She didn't even have time to get over her jet lag as she turned on her laptop and started working. The interview was scheduled for 3 p.m. the next day. Afterwards, Long Jie looked through the contents of the interview and turned her head to look at Tongning's sleeping face. Long Jie was extremely worried. If Imo Ting were to find out, his heart would be broken. Tongning also knew her body wasn't doing well. From now on, she needed to abstain from alcohol. She couldn't make herself suffer. An hour later, Fang Yu arrived at the hotel arranged by the agency and found Tongning's room. As soon as Long Jie saw Fang Yu, she thought he was Tongning's manager. She had a good impression of him. If that was the case, then why did Lu Che keep her in suspense? Fang Yu had only taken over halfway through the process. He understood how big of a challenge Tongning was facing this time. Excalibur Q was a global luxury brand. How could it be easy to secure an endorsement? Fang Yu turned his head to look at Tongning lying in bed. But he watched as her body suddenly twitched and she began to vomit. Fang Yu and Long Jie were so shocked that their expressions changed. They immediately rushed Tongning to the hospital in Milan. After being treated by the doctor, her condition finally stabilized. She hasn't recovered from the alcohol and has been on such a long journey. Of course her stomach isn't feeling well. Then, when will she recover? Long Jie asked the doctor in English. She will need to rest in bed for 2 days. Resting in bed meant she wouldn't be able to attend the interview tomorrow. Long Jie turned her head and looked at Fang Yu. All of a sudden, she didn't know what to do. Fang Yu was also silent, but he still pulled out his phone and called Imo Ting to report on the day's events. Tongning was afraid Imo Ting would be worried, so she told Fang Yu not to tell him she was hospitalized. Fang Yu thought about it for a moment, but in the end, he did not listen to Tongning and told Imo Ting about the situation. "I shouldn't have rushed her to shoot commercials and accept endorsements. How about we give up on the contract with Excalibur Q?" Fang Yu suggested. Opportunities could come again, but Hyrule would never joke around with an artist's health, especially when this person was someone Imo Ting cared about. But, contrary to Fang Yu's expectations, Imo Ting simply laughed. If she was willing to give up, then she wouldn't be Tongning. "What does the president want?" "Tomorrow, help her with the interview. But make sure nothing happens to her body. If anything happens that you can't handle, immediately give me a phone call." Fang Yu held onto his phone and suddenly wanted to do a test. So, he covered the phone and said to Tongning, "President Imo wants you to give up on the endorsement." "I have no reason to give up." Fang Yu's lips curved upwards. Indeed, the person that understood Tongning the most was Imo Ting. So, he handed the phone to Tongning and gestured for her to speak to Imo Ting on her own. The two were separated by mountains and rivers. Tongning held onto the phone, but she was too afraid to speak in a hoarse voice. "Don't force yourself. As soon as you feel any discomfort, immediately let Fang Yu know." "Okay," Tongning replied with a simple word. "Without you by my side, I'm really worried." Imo Ting felt a little regretful. Why did he focus on his work and not choose Tongning? If he had known he would be so worried, he would have moved the $100 million investment to the back of the contract. "I'm really fine now." "In that case, you can't drink from now on." "Okay, I won't drink anymore." Tongning nodded her head. As Fang Yu listened to the conversation between the two, he couldn't believe that the normally stern CEO could be so gentle when he fell in love. If Tang Ning was to find out that her manager was actually Imo Ting, he simply didn't know how long this couple could be happy for. He didn't mean to curse her, he simply... Chapter 221. After seeing through the industry and seeing all kinds of love, even the most loving relationship could end in tragedy. This was because he didn't understand what kind of woman Tang Ning was. To outsiders, her dignity was her bottom line. It was everything to her. But when it came to love, Tang Ning's thinking was not traditional. Even if she ended up arguing with Imo Ting for some reason, she would never give up on such a good man. Like this, Tang Ning's first day in Milan ended with her illness. Worth mentioning, as Long Jie helped Tang Ning back to the hotel, they bumped into Qin Yu in the lift. Qin Yu was wearing a white fur coat and fashionable dark red sunglasses. She glanced at the weak Tang Ning before turning her head and smiling at her assistant. Her assistant understood what she meant and couldn't help but let out a laugh. You haven't even stepped onto the battlefield and you've already collapsed. Is it because you're afraid? At this moment, Tang Ning didn't even have the energy to look at the woman as she lay quietly in Long Jie's arms. Long Jie didn't stupidly retaliate like she usually did. She simply stared at the woman like she was watching a joke until her eyes burned with fire. Qin Yu wasn't an extremely beautiful woman, but she had a unique appearance, especially the mole on top of her apple-shaped chest that always appeared on the runway. It was unforgettable. Tang Ning didn't doubt Qin Yu's abilities. The fact that she was able to enter Star King was proof that she had the professionalism to be proud of. So, she didn't think there was anything wrong with someone being arrogant. Of course, Fang Yu didn't say anything because not only was Qin Yu capable, she also had a background. If Qin Yu and Tang Ning were to compete for the Excalibur Q endorsement, Tang Ning would most likely be the one to lose. Although she was already married to Imo Ting, Fang Yu believed that Tang Ning didn't like to brag about their relationship to others. It didn't take long before Qin Yu stepped out of the lift. She walked with her unique style and pride. Long Jie glared at the two as they left. She was a little unconvinced. So what if she's from Star King? She must be mocking you for being blacklisted by Star King. Her momentum is indeed strong, Fang Yu replied straightforwardly. Last season, she was ranked 7th on the Asian model rankings. At least for now, she has the right to look down on us. Long Jie's expression did not look too good. She did not say a word. She felt Fang Yu wasn't as cute as Lu Che at this moment. Of course, Tang Ning comforted her. Fang Yu is right. Star King has so many experts and every single one of them is the real deal. There's nothing to be jealous about. But I also have high hopes for you. Fang Yu smiled at Tang Ning. You have nothing to lose. All you lack is an opportunity. I've never felt that I'm bad. Tang Ning was confident in herself. After all, she is the king's woman. Fang Yu muttered in a low voice. However, it was Tang Ning's words that gave Fang Yu some confidence. Therefore, whether or not he would be successful in tomorrow's interview, he would have to try to find out. After returning to her room, Tang Ning immediately closed her eyes to rest. Luckily, she was able to adjust her mental state quickly, so her body also recovered quickly. The next afternoon, 3 p.m. was Excalibur Q's official audition time. As a model from the Asian group, Tang Ning naturally had to perform on the same stage as Qin Yu. However, there was only one chance, and there was only one quota. Would Qin Yu, who had obvious facial features, be chosen, or Tang Ning, who had a domineering aura, be chosen? This was a difficult decision for the representative of Excalibur Q. From a comprehensive point of view, Tang Ning won in terms of professionalism, but in other areas, she was still lacking compared to Qin Yu. So, the representative of Excalibur Q chose Qin Yu as a backup. And because Qin Yu was given the opportunity, Excalibur Q notified her assistant. When the assistant found out Qin Yu had been chosen, she looked at Tang Ning with a slightly victorious expression. Sensing the situation wasn't right, Fang Yu immediately gave Imo Ting a phone call. President Imo, the endorsement might be snatched away. Hearing this, Imo Ting's heart ached as he thought about how Tang Ning had fought for it even though she was sick. Although he was worried about Tang Ning's health, he still said to Fang Yu, I will speak to the other party. Fang Yu naturally did not doubt Imo Ting's ability. He simply wanted to know how Ting would convince the other party. When would he get to witness Ting's glory as a manager? Making phone calls like this wasn't satisfying at all. Afterwards, Fang Yu hung up the phone and returned to Ning's side. At this time, the representative of Excalibur Q announced that the final result would be announced over the phone. The officials were still in dispute over the candidate. Qin Yu's manager's expression changed. Just a moment ago, the representative from Excalibur Q clearly told her that Qin Yu's endorsement was in the bag. How did it suddenly become a dispute? What did Ning do to Excalibur Q? In reality, this was all because of a phone call from Ting. Hello, Mr. Statham. I am Ning's manager from Hyrule Entertainment. My surname is Imo regarding Excalibur Q's spokesperson. I wonder if your agency has considered using Star King's Qin Yu? The representative froze. He didn't expect Ting to be so direct. It's not that Hyrule doesn't have top models, but do you know why they chose Ning? The representative was speechless, but he felt the people at Hyrule were quite interesting. I won't deny that Qin Yu is also an amazing model, but please compare the two's works. That way, you will know what you are looking for. Ting did not say too much. In fact, he was extremely concise. But he managed to pique the other party's interest and curiosity. So, after hanging up the phone, Statham immediately asked for the announcement to be delayed. He then asked someone to organize the two's works. In the end, Statham discovered that Ning was indeed an interesting model. Qin Yu's path was nothing more than to participate in an official competition and achieve her current status through Star King. Although her status wasn't low, when placed amongst a group of people, it wasn't very attractive. Replicas like her were everywhere. But Ning was different. She had a story. Excalibur Q was a product that had been passed down for hundreds of years. After so many years of hardship, it had accumulated a deep foundation. Plus, every time it went through a disaster, it was able to come back from the dead like Ning. So, Ning's rich plot twists were even more appreciated by him. Oriental Trend, TQ, LM. Just from these few pieces of data, they were all miracles created by Ning. Was this the attitude a spokesperson should have? But Qin Yu's background made them a little hesitant. Chapter 222. The person in charge of Excalibur Q couldn't make a decision in a short period of time. In the end, he decided to let the entire selection team vote. In reality, he was biased towards Ning. But Excalibur Q wasn't decided by him alone. He needed to see supporters in order to convince the higher-ups to use Ning, who wasn't as famous as Qin Yu. The selection team began to evaluate the two artists' works. In the end, Qin Yu was still in the lead. In the end, the selection team began to vote. There were a total of 7 people, 4 voted for Qin Yu and 3 voted for Ning. After seeing the results, Stinson furrowed his brows. The more people voted for Qin Yu, the more he felt conflicted about the result. It was like he could see the helplessness and oppression that Excalibur Q felt when faced with malicious competition. In the end, Stinson put down the results and looked at the members of the selection team in a serious manner. I will only say one last thing. If after hearing this, you still haven't changed your opinion, then we will go according to the results. Sir, please speak. Ning is walking the same path as Excalibur Q. No one understands better than her what it means to experience the ups and downs and what it means to be passed down through history. I hope Excalibur Q's endorsement is one that people can see the story and content behind, not just show off their popularity and pride. After speaking, Stinson looked at the crowd and said, "We will now proceed to the second round of voting." The competition was intense and the atmosphere was tense. After all, Excalibur Q had always been cautious when choosing their spokesperson. 10 minutes later, the second round of voting came to an end. The assistant announced the results. Ning received 7 votes, while Qin Yu received no votes. In reality, the others also had their eyes on Ning. But, because of their pride, they didn't say anything. But, as soon as Stinson expressed his stance, everyone understood his intentions and immediately chose the person they liked. It was for no other reason than the fact that they had worked at Excalibur Q for so many years. Apart from fame and money, they also had feelings. Over the years, they had fought against their competitors and witnessed Excalibur Q's growth and maturity. Of course, they understood how suitable Tongning was for the role of Excalibur Q's spokesperson. So, the latest results were out. Tongning won. Stinson immediately instructed his assistant to contact Tongning and tell her to prepare to sign the contract at Excalibur Q the next day. But the assistant confused Tongning and Qin Yu's contact details and called Qin Yu's manager. Qin Yu's manager thought Qin Yu had finally become the spokesperson. She excitedly hugged her and spun around the room. Finally, we've won against Hai Rue. Qin Yu, you've won against Tongning. It was normal for foreigners to make a mistake in their contact details. After all, foreigners may be able to remember a person's appearance, but it didn't match their identity. All in all, the assistant remembered the mole on Qin Yu's apple. So, she was certain she was the person Stinson was looking for. Fang Yu waited patiently for Tongning's phone call, but he knew the longer they waited, the smaller their chances would be. In the end, he had no choice but to say, "You've already tried your best. If you still can't change the outcome, then we will return home." Tongning stand by of her of time of time. She. Actually, you should understand, although JK established your foundation as an international supermodel, you still haven't been able to present any big data like rankings. So, it's not strange that you lost to Qin Yu. Don't take it to heart. Is there nothing else I can do? Tongning lifted her head and asked Fang Yu. You have already displayed your most professional attitude and tried your best. However, the more international the competition is, the more seniority is important. I still want to speak to Excalibur Q, Tongning pleaded, unwilling to admit defeat. Fang Yu glanced at Tongning and realized she had a spirit that refused to admit defeat. Even though he was so direct and decisive with his words, she still held on to her beliefs. Okay, I'll help you contact them. Fang Yu nodded in seriousness. Afterwards, Fang Yu pulled out some documents and made one last attempt. Although it took almost an hour, Fang Yu finally won the chance to speak to Stinson. He then handed the phone to Tongning. Take care of yourself. Tongning nodded her head in seriousness and received the phone from Fang Yu. Hello, Mr. Stinson. I am Tongning. Hello, Miss Tang. I'm sorry to disturb your rest so late at night. But, regarding Excalibur Q's spokesperson, can you hear me out for one last time? I really want to fight for this opportunity. Stinson froze for a moment. She was already the spokesperson. Why did she still want to fight for this opportunity? Stinson guessed there must have been a problem with communication. However, he did not explain. He also wanted to know what Tongning thought about Excalibur. Please speak. Excalibur Q's philosophy has allowed me to see a lot of power. It has made me feel that my path is very similar to Excalibur Q's. If I can't be the spokesperson, I will feel very regretful. The other party smiled. In reality, he felt the same way. If they didn't use a suitable model like Tongning and instead chose to use a template, they would also feel regretful. So, Stinson put down the porcelain cup in his hands and smiled at Tongning. Miss Tang, although I don't know what went wrong, according to the voting results from this afternoon, Excalibur Q's spokesperson has been confirmed to be you. I will contact my assistant to confirm again. But, since you've already called me, let me tell you to come to Excalibur Q tomorrow at 9 a.m. to sign your contract. After hearing this, Tongning froze for a moment. But you really need to thank your manager. Although he only said a few simple words, he showed us what we should focus on the most: quality. I hope we can work well together in the future. Let's work well together. Afterwards, Tongning put away her phone and handed it back to Fang Yu. However, as soon as Fang Yu heard the words "let's work well together," he understood Tongning had succeeded. Long Jia also jumped up in excitement. However, Tongning glared at Fang Yu and asked, Stinson said it was because my manager reminded him. So, was that person you? Fang Yu shrugged his shoulders. Of course not. If I had the ability, would I be in such a terrible situation like you? This only proves that your manager is truly amazing. Who exactly is he? At the moment, he still has work to do. So he asked me to come over and help out. However, during your interview this afternoon, I gave him a phone call and told him I couldn't handle it, so he contacted him, Fang Yu slowly explained. As expected, there's nothing he can't do. Chapter 223. Being able to successfully secure Excalibur Q made Tongning feel happy from the bottom of her heart. The conversation she had with Stinson was not for the sake of securing the endorsement, but because she truly liked the development of Excalibur Q. Sometimes, endorsements depended on fate. Tongning pulled out her phone and wanted to give Emoting a phone call. However, there was a 7-hour time difference between Italy and Beijing. At this time, Emoting should be resting. Tongning thought for a moment and decided to send Emoting a message. I've secured the endorsement. Tongning never expected Emoting to reply. Yet, Emoting actually gave her a phone call. Tongning was overjoyed, but her words contained a sense of blame. When I'm not by your side, you work until midnight without resting? Because I know you will definitely succeed. I've been waiting for your phone call, Emoting replied as he sat up and leaned against the headboard. Are you sure you're not working? Emoting had no choice but to video call her. Are you relieved? Ting. I'm very happy that I secured the endorsement. I know you will be very happy, Emoting said with a hidden meaning. He knew Tongning well enough to know that she would definitely like the Excalibur Q brand. That was why he considered this endorsement deal for her, and even made a phone call to fight for it with Stinson from thousands of miles away. As it turned out, all his efforts had not been in vain. Are you feeling better? I'm fine now. With you here, I wouldn't dare to fall sick, Tongning smiled. At this moment, Emoting wanted so badly to be by her side, stroke her hair, and give her encouragement. But, because of his collaboration with Hong Xian, it was temporarily impossible for him to fly by her side. The couple continued to talk sweetly on the phone. Long Jie and Fang Yu also left Tongning's room. However, after being triggered by Tongning, the two were reminded of the person in their hearts. Long Jie wondered what Lu Che's reaction would be if she were to give him a phone call at this time. After returning to her room, Long Jie sat on the bed in deep thought. In the end, she dialed Lu Che's phone number, but he did not pick up. Long Jie put down her phone and felt she was thinking too much. Lu Che wasn't anyone to her. How could he pick up her phone in the middle of the night? Taking a deep breath, Long Jie reminded herself to focus. She then put down her phone and headed into the bathroom to take a shower. However, halfway through the shower, she heard her phone ringing. Long Jie ignored the bubbles on her body and rushed out of the bathroom. As soon as she saw it was a call from Lu Che, she excitedly picked up the call. Lu Che, what happened? As soon as Long Jie heard Lu Che's raspy voice, she could tell he was in a daze. She really wanted to tell him that Tongning had secured the deal. But, on second thought, Boss was happy that Tongning had secured the endorsement because he was Tongning's husband. But, Lu Che had nothing to do with Tongning. So, Long Jie opened her mouth, but no words came out. She even sneezed because she was covered in foam. Did you catch a cold? Lu Che immediately asked. Hearing Lu Che's concern, Long Jie immediately smiled like a child who had just eaten candy. No, I don't have a cold. Oh, that's good. If there's nothing else, I'll go back to sleep. You should rest early too. Okay. Long Jie hung up the phone in a daze. She had a lot of things she wanted to say, but remembering it was the middle of the night and how tired Lu Che was during the day, she didn't want to disturb him any longer. Most importantly, as soon as she hung up the phone, she felt a little lonely. She suddenly felt very lonely. Plus, she was good at comforting herself. Since Lu Che picked up her phone in the middle of the night, did that mean she was special in his heart? But the truth was, Lu Che was originally sleeping soundly. As soon as he heard his phone ring, he naturally reached out his hand and looked at the caller ID. If it was someone else, he would have hung up without a second thought. Unless it was Emoting. But as soon as he saw Long Jie's name, even though he did not pick up, he still ended up calling her back. Most importantly, after hanging up the phone, his originally heavy sleepiness suddenly disappeared without a trace. It couldn't have been because he missed her, right? Lu Che dragged his heavy mind back to bed. In reality, he wasn't someone who liked to open the back door for others. After all, He worked at Hai Rue. At Hai Rue, everything was done according to the rules. However, when it came to Long Jie, he wanted to make an exception for her. An exception for her. Long Jie sat in the living room for quite some time covered in foam. As a result, when she woke up the next day, she actually caught a cold. Her throat was completely hoarse and she couldn't speak. Seeing Long Jie in pain, Tongning looked at her questioningly. Last night, you... What happened to me last night? Long Jie avoided Tongning's gaze guiltily. There was no way she was going to tell Tongning that she caught a cold while answering Lu Che's phone call. Tongning let out a gentle laugh. Deep down, she understood. In front of her, Long Jie was like a blank piece of paper. Do you want me to call Lu Che over? Tongning, you have President Fong and I by your side. Isn't that enough? Lu Che has his own things to deal with. When did you and Lu Che become a family? Let's go. It's time to sign the contract. Long Jie sneezed as she put on a face mask. In such cold weather, Tongning's body had just recovered. She couldn't afford to catch another cold. Tongning did not say anything, but on the way to Excalibur Q, she sent Lu Che a message. What happened between you and Long Jie last night? She caught a really bad cold. Lu Che was confused. We simply made a phone call. Tongning recorded the sound of Long Jie coughing and sent it to Lu Che. When I returned to my room yesterday, she was fine. After seeing the message, Lu Che was a little confused. What did Long Jie catching a cold have to do with a phone call? In reality, Tongning's hint was extremely obvious. But she couldn't be too direct with her words. After all, this was a matter between Long Jie and Lu Che. However, sometimes, the people involved were still confused, while the outsiders were already burning with anxiety. The three arrived downstairs at Excalibur Q's headquarters to sign the contract. But Qin Yu and her manager arrived earlier than the three. As soon as they saw each other, they were a little surprised. Everyone knew that Excalibur Q only had one spot for the Asian category. If they were all here to sign the contract, then what about Qin Yu? Of course, Qin Yu's manager had received a phone call from Stinson's assistant, so she was confident that Qin Yu would land the deal. As for Tongning, hasn't there been a rumor going around? A certain someone has a lot of tricks up her sleeves. Looking at the companies that have been destroyed one after another, you should know how capable she is. But if you can't win, you can't win. Chapter 224. Tongning ignored Qin Yu's manager's sarcasm and continued to maintain her calm. At this time, the elevator doors opened to reveal Stinson's assistant standing outside. As soon as he saw Qin Yu, he immediately approached her. Hello, Miss Tang. Mr. Stinson is already waiting for you. As they stepped out of the elevator, everyone was stunned. Especially Qin Yu and her manager, their faces flushed red with anger. Tongning also instantly understood where the mistake Stinson was talking about happened. It turned out the assistant had made a mistake, and Stinson had forgotten to explain everything to his assistant. Miss Tang, I'm not Miss Tang. Although Qin Yu was embarrassed, she still stated the truth. There's no mistake, Mr. Statham. The person he wanted was Tongning. Miss Tang, it was you? The assistant pulled out the resume and flipped through it. After seeing Tongning's photo, he suddenly realized his mistake. Oh God, I made a mistake? So, the spokesperson that Excalibur Q wants to sign, is Qin Yu or Tongning? Qin Yu's manager asked angrily. The assistant's face turned red as he stuttered as he looked at Qin Yu, and then back at Tongning. For a long time, he couldn't say a complete sentence. On the other hand, Fong Yu directly said to Tongning, let's go. It's almost time to sign the contract with Stinson. It's not polite to be late. Tongning walked past everyone and walked to the front, leaving the awkward Qin Yu and her assistant behind. Qin Yu's manager was unconvinced as she dragged Qin Yu along. We were also notified by Excalibur Q's assistant to sign the contract. Seeing this, Stinson's assistant's face turned from red to white. She didn't know how to deal with the situation. Seeing Qin Yu and her manager following behind, Fong Yu couldn't help but laugh. If you can't win, then you can't. I don't believe that Excalibur Q would waste such a good resource like Qin Yu. Is there something wrong with their brains? Why would they use a nobody? Fong Yu did not say another word. He knew if Qin Yu entered, she would only embarrass herself even more. Not long after, everyone arrived at Stinson's office. However, seeing Qin Yu following behind, Stinson couldn't help but feel a little awkward. He patted himself on the head and said to Qin Yu and her manager, "I'm really sorry, Miss Qin. This is all my assistant's fault. She contacted the wrong person. I'm really sorry." Excalibur Q chose Tongning as their spokesperson? Qin Yu asked straightforwardly. "That's right," Stinson nodded. "I'll get my assistant to escort you back to the hotel. Can you tell me why?" Qin Yu's voice was suppressed. It was obvious she didn't understand Stinson's decision. If she had lost to a supermodel like Hua Jingjing, she wouldn't have said anything. But who was Tongning? She couldn't win against the others in Hai Rui, but couldn't she win against Tongning? This is the result of a vote by Excalibur Q's selection team. We believe that Miss Tang is more suitable to be the spokesperson for Excalibur Q than Miss Qin. What vote? If it's internally decided, then just say it. Qin Yu's manager couldn't control her emotions and spoke to Stinson in an unfriendly manner. However, Stinson replied straightforwardly, "That would be an insult to us and also an insult to yourselves." When choosing a spokesperson, not only does the model's influence have to be considered, the most important factor is whether the model is compatible with our product. Miss Tang is indeed more suitable than Miss Qin. I hope Star King can show their generosity. What do you mean by suitable? Stinson lost his patience as he said to Qin Yu's manager, "At least we don't need a model that can't be replicated." Hearing this, Qin Yu froze. Meanwhile, Qin Yu's manager spun around angrily. "Mr. Stinson, I want you to apologize to Qin Yu. I am simply stating the truth. Indeed, in every aspect, Miss Qin is better than Miss Tang. But what we want is not the company's support. Plus, even if Miss Qin doesn't admit it, when it comes to professionalism, you are indeed inferior." "How can you prove that?" "I've already asked someone to investigate in Beijing. Every single one of Miss Tang's works can cause a huge commotion. But what about you, Miss Qin? You've caused the Oriental trend in North America, helped TQ magazine go from an unpopular brand to a bestseller, helped LM's wedding ring collection become #1, and snatched the throne of Beijing's famous talk show, Feng Kai. Miss Qin, have you done all of this?" Qin Yu choked on her words. She was suddenly speechless. Her mind was originally filled with words to refute Stinson, but she suddenly couldn't say a single word. Everything was stuck in her throat, making her feel uncomfortable and burning. After thinking about it carefully, she realized she really didn't have anything special to show. She didn't have any representative works. Even though she was easily remembered on the international stage, she didn't have any achievements that could cause a trend like Tongning's. Others might not know how difficult it was, but as a model, she was well aware. "If there's nothing else, please leave." Seeing Qin Yu had nothing else to say, Stinson politely reminded the two to leave. Qin Yu glanced at Tongning as all of her achievements over the past few months flashed across her mind. She finally felt a lot better. "There will definitely be a day when I can beat you." After speaking, Qin Yu left Stinson's office with her manager. However, her manager found it hard to swallow her anger. Who does Tongning think she is? Don't say that. Tongning does have some ability. After all, I can't refute Stinson's words. Qin Yu replied with a pale expression. "Qin Yu, if you lose this endorsement deal, how are you going to explain yourself?" Qin Yu's manager asked as she placed her hands on her hips. "We've lost to Hai Rui once again. In fact, we lost to a model with no international status. If news of this gets out, where would Star King put their face? What else can we do? It's obvious that Tongning has a hard time beating you. As long as her contract is cancelled, then you won't win or lose and Star King won't lose to Hai Rui," Qin Yu's manager suggested. "What do you want to do? Tongning has been through hundreds of battles. Do you think she's afraid of you?" Qin Yu scoffed. "Tonight, I'll go home and find out who her manager is before making a decision," Qin Yu's manager said thoughtfully. Actually, Qin Yu understood. Normally, when Star King competed with Hai Rui, Star King would always lose, but at least they were on the same level. But If she lost to such a low-level Tongning, what face and status would she have left in Star King? This was no longer a personal matter, it was a matter between Star King and Hyrule. Chapter 225. However, Emoting was more sensitive than Qin Yu's manager. As soon as he found out Tongning had signed, he immediately instructed the PR department to send out a statement congratulating Tongning on becoming Excalibur Q's new spokesperson. So, Qin Yu lost. Star King's artist director immediately contacted Qin Yu to ask her what had happened. The agency had put in so much effort and used such a powerful background, yet the endorsement had still been snatched away by someone else. In fact, it had been snatched away by Tongning. Qin Yu was momentarily speechless. Meanwhile, her manager was furious. Hyrule had acted so quickly that she didn't even have time to investigate who Tongning's manager was. The entire industry already knew that Tongning had pushed Qin Yu down. If Tongning tried to retaliate at this time, Star King would be targeted and their weakness would be used against them. So, not only could she not do anything, she had to pray for Tongning to succeed at her job. Who was Tongning's manager? Just like that, he had cut off any possibility of an accident happening to Tongning without giving her the slightest chance. Qin Yu also understood that Tongning had no chance of making a comeback with Excalibur Q. So, she said to her manager, "Let's go back immediately." The manager wasn't willing to give up, but at this moment, she was filled with curiosity. When did Hyrue's manager become so difficult to deal with? Not long after, Tongning saw the news. She suddenly had a few guesses about this mysterious manager. He couldn't make an appearance, yet he was able to handle the situation in such a swift and decisive manner. Who else could it be? In reality, Tongning should have guessed long ago because Emoting had previously mentioned it. At that time, Tongning didn't take it to heart. But now that she thought about it, it seemed this man had already planned everything. President Fong, who exactly is Tongning's manager? He has been working behind the scenes, yet he refuses to make an appearance. Is he playing hide and seek? Long Jie lost her patience after seeing the news. There was no doubt that he was very capable. But, as her manager, he refused to make an appearance. Wasn't he toying with her? Fong Yu tidied up his jacket and glanced at Tongning. Realizing she wasn't too curious about the answer, he smiled at Long Jie. He should be on his way. The reason he was absent previously was because he wasn't done with work. Plus, Excalibur Q's contract has already been signed. His reason for coming here is to help Tongning take the next step. After speaking, Fong Yu was silent for a few seconds before he continued. So, my work here has been completed. I have already booked an afternoon flight back to Beijing. So soon? I still have a bunch of PR news to release, Fong Yu said anxiously. However, Tongning did not see any signs of nervousness on his face. Okay then, ahem. Long Jie did not say any more polite words because she had a serious cold. Fong Yu glanced at Long Jie and said, Long said, go. Long Jie threw a pillow at Fong Yu. Actually, after interacting with Fong Yu for some time, one would discover that he was a very charismatic person. Not only was he eloquent and the face of Hyrue's PR, he also had a humorous personality. On the surface, he appeared to do whatever he wanted, but in reality, he was like the special student that always slept in class. He always had his own way of doing things and was smooth when dealing with people. He was extremely likable. Fong Yu smiled at the two and returned to his room. As he carried his luggage and left, he did not even say goodbye to the two. Long Jie watched from the window as Fong Yu left. She then turned around and asked Tongning, "Do you know who your manager is?" "I can roughly guess." Tongning stood up from the sofa and pulled out her luggage to find some medicine for Long Jie. "Who is it? What kind of manager do you think Imo Ting will give me?" Tongning asked as she moved closer to Long Jie. She pried Long Jie's face away from her so she wouldn't breathe on her face. Long Jie sat on the bed and analyzed. He must be very capable. Just like this incident, he handled it 100% perfectly. He knows how to take care of you and is even more meticulous than Fong Yu. He must be professional and understands you well. Most importantly, he must be able to plan for your future. Long Jie analyzed one thing at a time. In that case, who do you think fits these criteria? Long Jie tried to think of the names and looks of the managers at Hai Rui. Although they were all very capable, there was only one person that fit Tongning's criteria. Himself. Tongning looked at Long Jie like she was finally enlightened. This was the only answer Tongning could come up with. At first, Long Jie did not have much of a reaction. But, after a few seconds, she suddenly jumped up from the bed and hugged onto Tongning's shoulders. Is this true? Boss is going to personally be your manager? You're not joking, right? Tongning held onto Long Jie's excited hands and nodded her head. He mentioned it before, but I didn't know he would actually do it. It wasn't hard to tell that Tongning had a lot of worries and concerns about Mo Ting being her manager. The first thing she thought of was Mo Ting's work. With how busy he was, he couldn't possibly have the time to run around with her all the time. Plus, she didn't want Mo Ting to be so tired. Then, it must be true. Long Jie was still excited. How many people in this world could make Mo Ting their manager? There was only Tongning. All he cared about was his wife. This isn't what I was hoping for. Long Jie understood Tongning's worries, so she calmed down and hid her smile. Don't worry. Since boss has made a decision like this, he will definitely be able to coordinate his work. After all, he doesn't want you to worry. Plus, haven't you heard of this saying? When a couple works together, work isn't tiring. Tongning, think about it. You were born to be a model. As long as you have the chance, you will definitely create miracles. All you need is a manager that can protect you, and boss has the strongest ability. If the two of you work together, wouldn't you be invincible? Long Jie winked at Tongning with an unconcealable excitement on her face. Look, isn't the incident with Excalibur Q the best proof? With a few simple words, boss was able to change the other party's criteria. Isn't this proof of his ability? He is simply amazing. Plus, he may be busy with work, but he can delegate some of his responsibilities. Rather than letting him get tired in a place where you can't see him, why not let him be by your side? At least, you can monitor his rest. Why not? If you think he is tired, you can help him share his burden. Between a couple, what can't we do? Long Jie asked. Chapter 226. This matter was not within Tongning's control, so she felt a little panicked. Mo Ting was, of course, the best and one of a kind. But she couldn't imagine the public's reaction. Would this cause any harm to Mo Ting? Above all, Mo Ting's work was the thing she was most worried about. But Excalibur Q did not give Tongning any time to think. After signing the contract, Tongning immediately began filming the commercial that afternoon. As Tongning was working with European and American models, she did not have an advantage in terms of stamina, especially with the discomfort in her stomach. After 6 hours of continuous work, Tongning could no longer keep up. Long Jie was a little anxious. There were a few times she tried to ask the cameraman to take a break, but the cameraman refused to listen to her. Or, he simply said, "Everyone is working hard, and it's not just your models that are working hard to block me." Being in a foreign country, as an assistant, Long Jie felt helpless when it came to matters like this. But, from start to finish, Tongning endured. One set after another, she even had to reshoot multiple times due to the mistakes of the other models. "Tongning, are you okay?" During a break, Long Jie quickly handed her a glass of warm water and asked about Tongning's condition. Tongning touched her cheeks and nodded her head. "I should be able to hold on." "The contract doesn't say this. Are these European and American models trying to kill themselves?" Just as Long Jie finished complaining, a thin female model fainted with a thud. She fainted just like that? Isn't this a common occurrence? Tongning handed a glass back to Long Jie. "Can we get some rest now?" Come, let's continue." The studio staff called out. Long Jie lowered her head and looked at Tongning's feet. Wearing stilettos for 7 to 8 hours straight must have been torture. "What's wrong with you? You've been like this in the past. Just because Mo Ting has become my manager, do I become more valuable than before?" Tongning laughed as she looked at Long Jia. She had seen shoots that were even crazier than this in order to rush things, so this was nothing. But it's already been 8 hours. Don't worry, I can still hold on. After speaking, just as Tongning was about to ask the makeup artist to touch up her makeup, her arm was suddenly grabbed by a strong force. Tongning was stunned. Long Jia was also stunned. In reality, everyone on set was shocked by the appearance of this incredibly respectable man. The studio erupted with all sorts of noises. Some people had surprised expressions on their faces, while others started whistling. They thought Imo Ting was also a model, a top-quality model. However, Imo Ting simply circled his arm around Tongning and gestured for her to sit to one side. Tongning struggled for a moment as she stared into Imo Ting's obsidian eyes. But, after a few seconds, she gave up. She obediently sat down on a chair and handed everything over to this man. Long Jia was so excited that she secretly clapped her hands. Boss was here. Their savior was here. As expected, Mo Ting walked over to the photographer and said, "The contract states that Tongning's working hours are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. If Tongning has exceeded the stipulated time limit, her normal working hours should be limited to 2 hours. Are you trying to breach the contract?" In order to speed up the progress, the photographer squeezed out the rest time for the models. However, none of the European and American models protested. So, the photographer replied, "Everyone is rushing to speed up the progress. Do you expect us to wait for Tongning alone? If they are willing to be squeezed out by you, that is their business. But my Tongning cannot. Everything will be carried out according to the contract." After speaking, Imo Ting turned around and approached Tongning amidst the size of the crowd. "Can you still walk?" Tongning looked down at her eyes. Just as she was about to respond, Imo Ting had already wrapped his arms around her waist and lifted her in his arms. "Hey, after all this talking, who are you?" The photographer asked from behind. He had heard that Tongning had only brought along an assistant and a few bodyguards. Tongning's manager. Long Jia followed behind the couple and secretly smiled. After bullying boss's wife like this, it would be strange if he had a good attitude. But it went without saying, Long Jia was once again shocked by Imo Ting. Yesterday, when they were signing the contract, Fang Yu was obviously present to look at the contract. But from the way boss spoke, it was as if he had already memorized everything. Tongning leaned into Imo Ting's embrace as he placed her in the car. Seeing his angry expression, she couldn't help but ask, "Have you really decided to be my manager?" "What else?" "Miss Tang," Imo Ting asked as he drove. Normally, he would call her Mrs. Imo. It seemed he had a clear separation between work and life. He immediately put on the airs of a manager. "Now that work is over, can you get off work?" Imo Ting turned his head and glanced at Tongning as he sighed helplessly. He couldn't bring himself to criticize her. Even if he was angry, he couldn't bear to say anything harsh to the person he loved. Soon, they returned to the hotel. As soon as they entered the room, Imo Ting pressed her down onto the bed and kissed her on the lips. After feeling her for quite some time, he finally got up and knelt beside her legs to remove her shoes. Looking at her heels and instep covered in blisters or broken skin, he felt a little uncomfortable. Tongning quickly sat up and wrapped her arms around his neck from behind as she slowly pressed her body against his. "I've never seen your feet in good condition. Also, why did you continue working when you knew that you were being pressured by the photographer?" Hearing his complaints, Tongning laughed on his back. "When I was working, everything wasn't good. My feet hurt, my stomach hurt, and I felt extremely dizzy. But when I saw you, everything was fine." Imo Ting was at his wit's end. There was nothing he could do. So, he stood up with his back on her back and walked towards the floor-to-ceiling window. "I won't let anyone bully you anymore." At that time, if I had resisted, I would have been hated by the models and photographer. I didn't know what they would do behind my back. So, before you arrived, I could only choose the safest method. You know what I'm thinking. Plus, Manager Mo, hurry and get off work. You talk too much. I want my husband. Imo Ting swayed a few times with his back on her, You think I talk too much. When have you ever seen me care about someone like this? Stop talking. Let's go have a shower. Ting did not say another word. He knew Tongning was truly tired, so he helped her shower and placed her on the bed. I live opposite. If there's anything, give me a call. Tongning immediately woke up. You're not sleeping with me? While I'm at work, we'll follow the contract. Ting tucked her in and turned off the lights. Tongning watched as Ting left, and her lips curved upwards into a smile. The panic from before had completely disappeared. Chapter 227. The next morning, Tongning started work at 8 a.m., so she woke up at 6:30 a.m. After instructing Long Jie to prepare breakfast, she snuck into Ting's room. Yesterday, after landing, Ting went straight to the studio. He did not have time to tidy up his documents and clothes, so they were scattered all over the sofa. Tongning knew he was tired, so she gently tidied up his things and placed the fragrant breakfast on the dining table outside the bedroom. Finally, she walked over to the bed barefooted and sat down. She stretched out her hand and gently stroked Ting's handsome face. Ting seemed to have woken up a long time ago. He held onto Tongning's fingers and rested his head on her lap. Tongning's heart ached as she messed up his hair and held onto his ringed left hand. In a moment, Long Jie will accompany me to the shoot. You can get some rest, okay? Not today, Ting said with a hidden meaning. Tongning looked down at the watch on her wrist and realized it was still early. So, she lay down on the bed and hugged Ting. Aren't you going to ask me why I insist on being your manager? Tongning thought for a moment and smiled. You've already done it, so I have to trust in your decision. Even if I am afraid and have my reservations, I will never be the one to hold you back. If you aren't afraid, why should I be? Don't be afraid. In the entire industry, no one is more capable than my manager. What else do I have to be unsatisfied with? Ting, you've already made me confident enough. You've also made me put down my mask and strong shell. You've made me better. Ting quietly held onto Tongning's hand without saying a word. The relationship between husband and wife had always depended on each other. Their goal was to make each other's lives better. The couple lay in bed for 40 minutes. In order to arrive at the studio before 8 a.m., Ting lifted the blankets and got out of bed. However, he had a habit of sleeping naked, so Tongning couldn't help but blush. In the end, Ting let out a gentle laugh as he held onto Tongning's chin and instructed, I'm going to have a shower. Help me find some clothes. Okay, we've been husband and wife for so long. Aren't you familiar with my body? I can't believe you're blushing. Because it is the perfect body. After speaking, Tongning walked over to the wardrobe and pulled out a new set of clothes. At 8 a.m., the group arrived at the studio on time. Tongning quickly got into the mood as she put on her makeup and tried on her clothes. However, compared to yesterday, because Ting was present today, the photographer was a lot more restrained. In front of Tongning, he was gentle, caring, and took good care of her. But in front of outsiders, he was always an unapproachable king. A son that no one could look up to. Who is that person? I heard he is Tongning's manager. I don't think so. He's so good. Why didn't he become a model? Should we go up and strike up a conversation? The surrounding staff whispered amongst themselves as they worked. Some even tried to flirt with Ting. However, before they could get close, Ting's piercing gaze made them freeze in fear. Long Jie stood by Ting's side, feeling proud. It felt so good. As soon as boss arrived, no one dared to look down on them anymore. An entire day of filming went by. Ting, apart from supervising, also took out his own work to deal with. As evening approached, Stenson and a few other representatives from Excalibur Q arrived at the studio to check on the progress of the commercial. However, as soon as they arrived, their eyes were immediately drawn to Ting. Stenson felt he had seen this man somewhere before. He looked very familiar. He even asked his assistant quietly. In the end, his assistant replied, Sir, he is the CEO of the famous entertainment company, Hirue Entertainment. Mr. No wonder. Stinson immediately thought of the person that gave him a phone call earlier. Tongning's manager also had the surname Imo. Could it be? Stinson did not dare to delay as he walked over and extended his hand towards Imo Ting. I didn't expect President Imo to grace us with his presence. Sorry for not going out to greet you. You're too polite, Mr. Stinson. My Tongning has caused you trouble. Not at all. Tongning is very outstanding. Stinson was not stingy with his praise. It's a pity Tongning isn't in a good state today. Perhaps it's because she worked too long yesterday. Otherwise, she could have done better, Mo Ting said with a hidden meaning. As soon as Stinson heard this, he understood what Mo Ting meant. Don't worry, President Mo. Excalibur Q will make sure Miss Tongning maintains a happy working mood. Stinson let out a sigh in his heart. He was also glad he didn't choose Qin Yu. Tongning didn't appear to have much power. But who would have thought she actually managed to get a famous entertainment company's CEO to act as her manager? It was clear to see she had a bright future ahead of her. This was Hai Rui's way of protecting Tongning when it came to competing for resources. I wonder if Mo Ting would do me the honor of joining us for dinner tonight? It would be my honor. However, I may need to bring a female companion. Mo Ting replied politely as he placed his gentle gaze on Tongning. Stinson nodded his head and smiled. However, the three of them did not manage to have dinner together. That night, a scandal broke out in Beijing, and this scandal involved Hua Jingjing. An entertainment reporter revealed that Hua Jingjing had been living with a gambling addict for 10 years, had multiple abortions for him, and was even beaten up by him. As soon as Tongning saw the news, she suddenly thought back to the night at the Beijing private club. Hua Jingjing had told her not to make it public. Not to make it public. But, in just a few days, Hua Jingjing actually got into trouble. She was an international supermodel. Overnight, she was suddenly linked to a gambling addict. With so many scandals going around, her reputation took a huge hit. Hai Rui immediately started PR and blocked 70 to 80% of the news. But it still created quite a stir. In fact, it was comparable to Han Shiner. There were even people that started spreading rumors, claiming it was all because Tongning had joined Hai Rui. Whenever she was involved with a company, it would always end up in a tragic state. Chung Tian Entertainment's collapse was the best example. Bullshit. Long Jie threw her phone aside after seeing the news. Tongning had no time to care about herself. She simply couldn't help but worry about Hua Jingjing. In the study room, Mo Ting was having a video conference with the higher-ups of Hai Rui, giving Fang Yu full authority to handle the situation. But even though they managed to suppress the news, they couldn't stop the rumors from affecting Hua Jingjing. For some reason, Tongning suddenly felt a little afraid. She was afraid that if her relationship with Mo Ting were to be made public, there would be another bloodbath. So, Tongning asked Mo Ting for Hua Jingjing's phone number. After hesitating for a moment, she gave her a call. Chapter 228. Tongning thought Hua Jingjing wouldn't pick up the phone, but she actually picked up. I am Tongning. Afraid that the man would hang up, Tongning immediately revealed her identity. I know. Hua Jingjing's voice was a little raspy. It was obvious she had just cried. But there was a sense of stubbornness in her voice. It seemed she had not given up yet. In the news, everything in the news is true. Hua Jingjing acted like she had finally found someone to confide in. The almighty international supermodel, Hua Jingjing, has a gambler at home. She's even had an abortion 3 times and is always beaten by him. I met him when I was 17, and we started dating when we were 18. At that time, I never thought about being a supermodel. But I wasn't rich and my parents needed money. So, he suggested I become a model and used all his resources to help me find resources. In the first few years, we were very happy. Tongning was even happier than you and President Mo. But as the industry became more and more tempting in the end, he couldn't control his lower half and ended up in a relationship with another model. But I'm cheap, I can't let him go. However, he always thought that I was the one who got someone to plot against his lover. So, from the day his lover passed away, he never looked me in the eye again. I don't remember how many years it has been. I kept my promise and left half of my income at home, but I know that he always gambled with it and often drank. When he was drunk, he would punch and kick me. How many days did I think it would be better if I just died like this? Everything would end once and for all. Until I met my current manager. He discovered me and Hairue accepted and nurtured me. In fact, I once thought that I would work like a slave for President Mo for the rest of my life. But I never expected that things would still be exposed one day. I've worked so hard to keep it a secret. As Tongning listened to Hua Jingjing recount her experience, she could imagine how much love a woman would have for her man despite having reached such a high position. You've already done very well. He was the one who exposed the news to the media. Because I refused to pay him, he actually sold the news to Imperial Star. Bitch. Tongning cursed in her heart. He was even worse than Han Yufan. I'm done. I feel much better now. Tongning didn't know why Hua Jingjing trusted her so much. Perhaps it was because they had both been through a lot of bad things, so they felt a sense of empathy. I will announce my withdrawal from Hairue. I don't want to implicate my family, especially you. I know it wasn't easy for you to get to where you are today, but rumors are already flying everywhere. Jingjing, since Hairue is your home, you have no reason to leave. I'm sure you've already gotten used to this life. Perhaps you are tired and fed up, but listen to me. If I can meet Emoting, you can also meet someone that truly treats you well. Hold on a little longer. Hold on a little longer. Hua Jingjing didn't answer. She only smiled bitterly and hung up the phone. Tongning put down her phone. As she thought about Hua Jingjing's situation, her body trembled. The industry made her feel afraid, and the uncertainty of the human heart made her panic. After Emoting finished his meeting, he saw Tongning's pale face. He reached out his hand to support her. Realizing her hands were also cold, he immediately carried her onto the bed. What's wrong? Tongning hugged onto Emoting's arm in a daze. The person that betrayed Hua Jingjing is the man she has loved for many years. Emoting immediately understood Tongning's fear. He reached out his hand, cupped her cheeks, and began to kiss her. Tongning could feel Emoting's breath. She closed her eyes and kissed him until her body began to heat up. Only then did she pull away from Emoting's lips. Are you feeling better? Much better. Tongning nodded her head. The two women looked at each other. Emoting didn't need her to say anything to understand what she meant. Hairue was definitely going to get back at Star King. Most importantly, they were going to make sure the traitors got what they deserved. Otherwise, what hope did the world have? What else was there to give someone the courage to live again? Tongning calmed herself down and pushed Emoting. Go back to work. I'm fine. Emoting did not say a word. He simply pulled Tongning up and into the study room to continue with his work. However, he wanted Tongning to be within his line of sight the entire time. Tongning watched as Emoting worked seriously and thought everything out perfectly. Wasn't this how the man she admired should be like? After work was over, Tongning wanted to return to her room, but Emoting carried her in the shower and lay in bed with her. Tongning could feel Emoting hugging her from behind. She couldn't help but laugh. Didn't you say during work, everything will go according to the contract? Yes, but I am the CEO. Does that mean the CEO can cheat? Tongning turned around and continued to laugh as she lay on top of Emoting's body. For you, there's nothing I can't do, Emoting said after a moment of silence. This one sentence clearly resounded from above Tongning's head, causing her body to freeze in surprise. I know you're afraid of losing me, but I'm more afraid of losing you. Tongning suddenly let out a gentle laugh. Emoting understood the fear in her heart. It turned out, she wasn't the only one that was afraid. Emoting was also afraid. So, why must I be your manager? It's always been because of you. Only because of you. Tongning's heart was suddenly filled with confidence. This was Emoting's love. So, she was no longer influenced by Hua Jingjing. She simply believed in the feelings in her heart. This man was right. This man was worthy of her love. I still have one more day of work. After I'm done, we can return to China together. Ting, promise me. You won't let Star King and that man get away with it. Ting did not say a word. He simply responded with his actions as he flipped over and pressed Tongning under his body. Tongning was moved as she hooked her arms around his neck. The couple had a tacit understanding when it came to this. Even a simple action was enough to understand each other's desires. However, in the heat of the moment, Tongning couldn't help but bite Ting's shoulder. It was as if she wanted to leave a permanent mark on his body, a mark that belonged solely to her. This was exclusive to Tongning, and no one should even think about touching it. Chapter 229. Hua Jingjing's scandal spread like wildfire. Even with Hai Rui's forceful suppression, they couldn't compete with the news that was released 3 times a day. Hua Jingjing was once an international supermodel. In the eyes of others, she was unreachable. But, because of this scandal, Hua Jingjing's status plummeted. She was ridiculed and attacked by netizens. In fact, it even affected Hai Rui. Fang Yu's PR strategy was to get Hua Jingjing to play the sympathy card. After all, she was originally a victim. But Hua Jingjing's mental state wasn't looking good. If he wanted her to step out bravely, it wouldn't be easy. Saving a person's body was easy, but saving a person's heart was harder than climbing to the heavens. Fang Yu had never been betrayed before, so he couldn't understand the pain and shame that seeped into his bones. But Tongning knew how it felt. So, Tongning spoke to Fang Yu on the phone. That night, Fang Yu arrived at Hua Jingjing's apartment. Her assistant tidied up Hua Jingjing's messy room while Fang Yu took a look around her home. The marks left behind by the man were still there, but he had left the woman he had lived with for so many years in such a terrible state. What do you want to drink? Get it from the fridge. I don't have the strength to do it myself, Hua Jingjing said dispiritedly as she sat on the carpet. Fang Yu looked at Hua Jingjing and noticed her clothes were disheveled. Her hair was messy, her face was pale, and her eyes were lifeless. Tongning asked me to come over. She said you needed someone by your side. After speaking, Fang Yu felt he was being a little unreasonable, so he continued, She's quite a busybody, isn't she? She can't even handle her own business. I think she misunderstood. She probably thinks I treat her as a friend, Hua Jingjing replied with a bitter smile. Don't tell me you don't treat her as a friend? Fang Yu turned around and sat down on the sofa. He placed his elbows on his knees and tilted his head to look at Hua Jingjing. Tongning and I only interacted for a short day. It was the day Star King stole our resources. Did you know? On the runway, she is much better than Qinyu. She is a natural model. But the selection process was full of twists and turns. While waiting for the call, if it were you, you would have turned around and left Milan because of your pride. Even I was about to ask her to give up, but she asked me for the phone number of the partner. She personally told the other party that if I couldn't be your spokesperson, I would feel very regretful. I don't know how much the other party was moved by those words, but at the very least, if I heard it, I would definitely give her another chance. Hua Jingjing quietly listened to Fang Yu talk about the runway and Tongning. She couldn't deny that in this short 1 to 2 minutes, she had forgotten all her pain. All she could think about was how it would be like if she was the one in Italy. Fang Yu observed her expression and laughed. Actually, you are still deeply in love with your career. You don't need feelings, do you? Hua Jingjing grabbed the bottle and gulped it down. She neither admitted nor denied it. Tongning said your silence is allowing that man to hurt the people around you. You, your parents, your friends, Hai Rui and Tongning. It's fine for you to shoulder everything on your own, but have you thought about the people that are worried about you? How many years has Hai Rui trained you? How can you bear to be humiliated by Star King like this? After hearing this, Hua Jingjing's eyes finally showed signs of emotion. Right now, everyone is saying that you are in trouble because of Tongning's curse. In fact, some of your fans have already started to attack Tongning. What did she do wrong? Why should she pay for your cowardice? Hua Jingjing, men aren't like this. Men are also affectionate. As for your man, how much does he hate you for him to abuse you for so many years? Worst of all, you didn't do anything wrong. Hearing this, Hua Jingjing suddenly burst into tears. She was the one that had been betrayed. She was the one that had been hurt, and now, she was the one that had been destroyed. Fang Yu stepped forward and wrapped his arms around Hua Jingjing, allowing her to cry. After she calmed down, he finally let her go. After a moment of silence, Hua Jingjing finally lifted her head and said to Fang Yu in determination, "What should I do? I will cooperate." Fang Yu let out a sigh of relief and suddenly smiled. "That's more like you, our heroine. Tomorrow morning, we will hold a press conference to clarify the truth. Trust me, as long as you cooperate, I will definitely teach Star King a lesson." Hua Jingjing nodded her head. "I will pull myself together." Fang Yu patted her on the shoulder encouragingly. He could hear the strength in her words. When a person's heart was pierced by 1,000 arrows, they were invincible, because they had nothing to fear. When Tongning received the news, she was still in the middle of her commercial shoot. Perhaps because she felt the power of rebirth, Tongning was even more focused on her shoot. She was in perfect condition, and her popularity surpassed that of the European and American models. In reality, in a commercial with a mix of men and women, due to the fact that men were more powerful, the first thing that consumers saw was a male model. But Tongning's gaze was exceptionally stunning. She had a wilder and more aggressive expression than a man's. This was the last day of filming. After finishing, Tongning immediately wrapped her arm around Emoting's and said, "Let's go back to Beijing. Aren't you going to take a day off?" "I want to cheer for Hua Jingjing," Tongning begged. Emoting didn't know what to do. He simply held onto her hand and said goodbye to Stinson. After saying goodbye, he immediately booked a plane ticket back to Beijing. However, this time, the two of them would appear at the airport together. They no longer had to pretend to be strangers, and they no longer had to avoid the paparazzi one after another. Although, as they arrived at the airport, Tongning still subconsciously observed the reporters. But, Emoting reminded, "Walk properly. If you want the media to take photos, do you think you're sneaking around like a thief?" "But, are you coming with me?" "Yes, I'm coming with you. I am your manager. Shouldn't I be coming with you?" Emoting hooked his arm around her shoulder and pulled her closer to his side to prevent her from being squeezed away by the passers-by. Tongning looked at the crowds of passengers and noticed there weren't many reporters gathered at the airport. She let out a sigh of relief. After taking one last look at Emoting, she walked ahead on her own with Emoting and Longjie following behind her. This was something the media did not expect. When they were following them, they refused to let them. Now that they were no longer following them, they took the initiative to release information. However, someone still spotted Emoting and Tongning. They approached them for autographs and asked, "Tangjia, why are you with President Emo?" Chapter 230. Tongning froze for a moment before replying honestly, "Because we've finished working together." The young woman smiled as she suddenly jumped in front of Emoting and handed him her notebook. "In that case, can I also get an autograph from President Emo? It's not easy for me to come across one." Emoting glanced at the young woman and then looked at Tongning. Tongning shrugged her shoulders. She was the one that didn't want to avoid it, so she deserved to be asked for an autograph. Emoting glanced at Tongning helplessly as he received the black pin from the young woman and confidently signed his name. He then turned to Tongning and asked, "Can we go now?" Tongning smiled. This time, she was a lot more cautious as she put on her sunglasses and face mask and boarded the plane. "Since we're already back, let's attend the Super Queen Awards ceremony as a guest." Super Queen was actually the most lucrative model rankings over the past year. Hua Jingjing was ranked at the top, but in her current state, it was a little worrying for her to go on her own. So, Emoting arranged for Tongning to attend. He did this to show her the difference between herself and the top 3 models, and to cheer Hua Jingjing on. On the day of the ceremony, he was going to make a move. He was going to use the Super Queen Awards ceremony to officially announce that he was Tongning's manager and raise her status to new heights. "It's up to you," Tongning said in a tired voice as she trusted Emoting completely. Meanwhile, Emoting hugged Tongning and lowered his head to place a kiss on her forehead. At this moment, he didn't want to think about anything else. All he wanted to do was place the best things in front of her. Because of Hua Jingjing's popularity, the media placed all their attention on Hai Rui's upcoming press conference. Very few people noticed that Tongning and Mo Ting had already returned to China. On the way back, Tongning heard the same thing. Don't say that Hua Jingjing is pitiful. Perhaps her gambling addiction is even bigger, and she simply hides it too well. I never expected that a supermodel's life would be so messed up. She's even had 3 abortions. I'm afraid she can't give birth anymore. I'm sure she's still a virgin. How disgusting. After hearing these words, Tongning suddenly let out a cold laugh. She thought about how many times she had become the topic of discussion after meals. She suddenly felt sad. Everyone thought they were glamorous, but they had no idea of the bitterness and helplessness behind the scenes. It was said that celebrities were loved by the most people. In fact, celebrities had the most enemies. Sitting in the nanny van, Tongning suddenly wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's arm. As long as Mo Ting was there, she could truly feel at ease. Mo Ting placed Tongning on his lap and gently stroked her hair with his warm palms. I'll wake you up when we get home. No, Ting, you deal with Hai Rui. There's no need for me to do something like this. Star King's little tricks were nothing in his eyes. Fang Yu has full authority to handle it. In that case, I want to see Hua Jingjing. Women should have some intimate words. Mo Ting did not reject. He simply asked Lu Che to drive an unassuming car out of the garage and drive Tongning to Hua Jingjing's apartment. However, Hua Jingjing's home was surrounded by paparazzi. Hua Jingjing had no way of leaving and Tongning had no way of entering. So, Tongning gave Hua Jingjing a phone call. Not long after, a well-disguised Hua Jingjing appeared and boarded Tongning's car. Lu Che then drove the two to the quiet seaside. Hua Jingjing had a scarf wrapped around her face. Even when no one was around, she did not remove it. Tongning seemed to have guessed something was wrong, so she reached out and removed the scarf. Hua Jingjing's face was covered in bruises and bruises. Did you get hit again? Hua Jingjing threw the scarf on the beach and spat out a mouthful of blood. I had a showdown with the jerk. In the end, he flew into a rage and tried to kill me. I took the opportunity to escape. Tongning looked at her quietly without saying a word. Hua Jingjing leaned against the front of the car as tears rolled down her cheeks uncontrollably. He wanted all of my assets, or he would expose us. I really wanted to die with him. I'm so tired, so tired. Tongning looked at Hua Jingjing and asked in seriousness, tell me, how did the jerk's lover die? She was beaten to death. She died on the streets. He thought I hired someone to do it. Didn't you look for the truth afterwards? Tongning asked. How could I not? But I still need someone to believe me. Tongning immediately found the crux of the matter. This was the key to defeating the man. Tell me all the evidence you have and send someone to investigate. Jingjing, the best way for you to get revenge on that man is to make him regret it. Make him turn around and beg you. But you didn't even look back. You are still you, the supermodel. This time, it's not like you don't have a chance to make a comeback. Hua Jingjing looked at Tongning and was suddenly impressed by her clear thinking, especially when she heard Tongning say she would make the jerk regret. There were so many times in the past when she had nightmares where she wanted to strangle the man beside her to death. But, in the end, she couldn't bring herself to do it. This time, she was no longer weak. She closed her eyes and said, okay. After chatting, Hua Jingjing looked at Tongning and suddenly burst into tears and laughter. Have you always been this calm, or is it because of President Mo's guidance? He pulled me back from hell. He gave me a brand new life. Tongning, you and President Mo need to continue loving each other. Sometimes, seeing people in love is a form of strength. It makes you feel like you can receive love. Tongning turned around and leaned against Hua Jingjing. I will do my best to satisfy everyone. Let's go home. Fang Yu has arranged for a press conference. Tongning thought for a moment and suddenly said to Hua Jingjing, let's not go to the press conference. Let's go to the hospital. The pity card isn't just for crying. We need to show our female compatriots real pain. Hua Jingjing understood what Tongning was trying to say and nodded her head in agreement. The two people who appreciated each other, at this moment, did not need to say anything to each other. They were already considered friends, even though, strictly speaking, they were in a difficult situation. Afterwards, Tongning returned to Hyatt Regency. Not long after, the entertainment news broke. On the eve of the press conference, Hu Jingjing suffered another new injury. She was suspected to have been threatened to keep her mouth shut. Fang Yu quickly followed the news and revealed the truth. It was Hu Jingjing's handwritten diary. The diary was written from the perspective of a woman who had been hurt for many years. It described the pain and oppression she had suffered over the years. As the diary was revealed to the public, it resonated with many people, especially women. As soon as they read the diary, they began to cry. And the trigger was the sight of Hu Jingjing suffering a serious injury. The female compatriots immediately exploded with power. It didn't take long before public opinion began to change. Chapter 231. Hu Jie, Tongning is amazing. Fang Yu's PR is also amazing. The public opinion is already leaning towards us. Inside the hospital room, her assistant looked at the news with a joyful expression. But, promise me, from now on, don't be so stupid. Even I cried for a long time after reading that diary. Hu Jingjing felt like she had been pushed to the brink of death. Apart from anger, the pain in her heart had lessened. Perhaps it was because of Hai Rui's counterattack. All along, I thought Tongning was just a pretty face and had no right to be considered your sister. Did you think President Imo would find a pretty face? Hu Jingjing asked. The assistant scratched her head and smiled embarrassedly. Hu Jingjing lowered her head and thought for a moment. Suddenly, she lifted her head and looked out the window. She spoke in a tone that even she couldn't believe. Tongning's power can save a person's heart. Do you still think she is just a pretty face? I can completely understand why President Imo likes Tongning. In fact, I feel, in this world, only Tongning is worthy of President Imo. As for anyone else, I refuse to acknowledge them. I don't know what Tongning was like in the past. All I know is, the current Tongning can see through a person's soul. The assistant didn't understand what soul meant. All she knew was, the reason Hu Jingjing was able to recover so quickly was because of Tongning. In fact, she could sense a brand new Hu Jingjing. Perhaps, from this day onwards, Hu Jingjing's kindness would take root in Hu Jingjing's heart. So, from this day onwards, she was going to help Tongning get what she wanted. Everything. Because of the diary and the violence, Hu Jingjing managed to turn the tables. But, if Star King thought this was all Hai Rui could do, they were underestimating Hai Rui and Imo Ting. Afterwards, the testimonies of passers-by, the retaliation of fans, the support of neighbors and friends, and the praise of business partners. Hai Rui suppressed Star King from all directions and turned everything that the jerk revealed into evidence of his violence. Hai Rui swept Star King aside and directly turned Hu Jingjing into a woman with a tragic past. They even made sure her sensational past attracted the attention of many authors and film companies. They even wanted to publish a book and adapt it to the big screen. Of course, regardless of whether these rumors were true or not, those that once hated or cursed at Hu Jingjing could no longer hate her. In fact, some even bought a newspaper page and directly apologized to her. Thus, Hu Jingjing came back to life. No matter what the scumbag said, the reporter's focus would not be on him. That night, the hospital room was quiet. Meanwhile, Hu Jingjing's assistant was helping Hu Jingjing manage her fan club. After a while, the assistant looked up at Hu Jingjing and said, "Sister Hu, what happened?" Hu Jingjing picked up the phone and looked at the fan club. They were all discussing how Hu Jingjing was exposed because she was cursed by Tongning. It's all because of that cheap model. Otherwise, how could our Jingjing be in such a situation? Exactly, Tongning is a poison. Wherever she goes, she causes trouble. Why don't we go and slander Tongning? Seeing the fans talking one after another, Hu Jingjing logged onto her account and stepped in. The 3 fans that just said Tongning isn't a good person. I hope they can stop liking me. As soon as the fans saw Hu Jingjing appear, they immediately exploded with messages. But Hua Jingjing still replied in seriousness, I will only say this once. Without Tongning, I would not have been reborn. So, from now on, if any of Hua Jingjing's fans says one bad thing about Tongning, I, Hua Jingjing, will definitely tear them apart. Oh God, Jingjing is so domineering. Jingjing, are you feeling better? Since you're saying this, Tongning has helped our Jingjing before. Did you hear that? From now on, don't say bad things about Tongning again. Tongning isn't a poison. She is truly a good person. Hearing Hua Jingjing's words, the fans in the chat group finally calmed down. Afterwards, they all expressed their support. Jingjing, don't worry. I will pass on your message to all the Hua Jingjing fans. From now on, Tongning will be protected by us Hua Jingjing. We will definitely support you to the end. Go Jingjing. Seeing this, Hua Jingjing was satisfied as she handed the phone back to her assistant. Because of Hua Jingjing's action of tearing apart her fans online, it attracted a lot of attention in the fan circle. After all, it was rare for a celebrity to tear apart their own fans for someone else's sake. And this was how Hua Tang's friendship started to spread. Late at night, Tongning was still in the study room looking through the information Hua Jingjing had gathered. She was going to find the culprit and help Hua Jingjing clear the injustice she had suffered for so many years. Beside her, Mo Ting was handling some work. Seeing Tongning being so serious, he put down the documents in his hand and sat down beside her. You've already done enough for Hua Jingjing? Ting, what if the jerk uses Hua Jingjing to hire a killer to create more hype? No one believes his words anymore. Mo Ting said in seriousness as he pulled her into his embrace. I'm not trying to stop you from finding the culprit. I simply don't want you to tire yourself out. What if I told you that Hua Jingjing is my friend? Mo Ting smiled and picked up the documents. Mrs. Mo, do you think I'd make it so that you don't have any friends? I'll look through it with you. Tongning hooked her arms around Mo Ting's neck and kissed him on the lips. She then let go and continued to look for clues. But after looking for quite some time, she still couldn't find anything. This made Tongning a little depressed. All she could tell was, the jerk's lover wasn't a good person either. There was definitely more than one man. So, Mo Ting put down the documents and said to Tongning, sometimes, you don't have to find the truth. You can create a false impression. Tongning turned her head and looked at Mo Ting. The couple could read each other's minds with just one look. I understand, Tongning replied with 4 words. I don't care how the lover died. At the very least, she wasn't a clean person. Because of her, Hua Jingjing has suffered for so many years. It's time for her to suffer. Tongning understood what Mo Ting was trying to say. He wanted to create a false impression that the woman had been killed by another man. He wanted the jerk that had tortured Hua Jingjing for so many years to have a taste of what it felt like. The true love that he had held onto for so many years was nothing more than a joke. He was just one of the men that the woman had. Mo Ting wrapped his arms around Tongning from behind and placed his chin on her shoulder. He then took a deep breath. When I'm with you, I don't need to say too much because you understand. That's because you understand me. That's why you deserve the best. As soon as Tongning heard this, she furrowed her brows. What are you going to give me this time? Chapter 232. The aftermath of the Hua Jingjing incident was exactly as Tongning expected. The jerk actually exposed the fact that Hua Jingjing had hired a hitman to kill someone to the media. He even promised to invite his lover's parents to testify in front of the media. The netizens couldn't help but sigh. They couldn't understand how such a shameless person could exist in this world. Anyone with eyes could tell that Hua Jingjing really knew how to play these tricks. She wouldn't have to endure so many years of violence a long time ago. Yet, the jerk was stubborn. The netizens looked like they were waiting to see what tricks Hua Jingjing had up her sleeves as they continued to focus on the farce surrounding Hua Jingjing. In private, Tongning asked Lu Che to investigate the parents of the jerk's lover and find out what their attitude towards their daughter's death was. Meanwhile, Hua Jingjing replied nonchalantly, "Let them appear on the news. I want to see how heartless people can be. Fang Yu looked at Hua Jingjing questioningly. Are you saying we don't need PR for this incident? There's no need, Hua Jingjing answered with certainty. When she said these two words, there was a sense of relief in her tone. Fang Yu was still worried, so he asked again, Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. I want to see how the jerk is going to make a comeback. Although Fang Yu trusted Hua Jingjing, he still made the necessary preparations. They sat in the hospital room and watched as the jerk, Yuan Xin, was interviewed. All you do is sympathize with Hua Jingjing being beaten, but you don't know how ruthless she is. All you see is me hitting Hua Jingjing. Why didn't you see Hua Jingjing hitting someone else? Back then, I wronged her, but we were still married. Plus, while I was with Yuan, Hua Jingjing and I had already broken up. You had no idea that Yuan wasn't a third party. Hua Jingjing has been lying to you from the beginning. She hired someone to kill Yuan. She is the culprit. Sitting beside Yuan Xin was a well-educated couple. From their appearance and temperament, they seemed to have received a high level of education. As Yuan Xin spoke, the couple's faces were ashen. This made the media think that the couple was angry after finding out the cause of their daughter's death. Uncle Andy, I've let you down. I've let Xiaowen die with everlasting regret and tarnished her reputation. I've let you down. Today, please tell me the truth. The couple turned to look at Yuan Xin. First, Lu Yuowen's father took the microphone, but he stood up at the same time. Then, he did something that shocked everyone. He took the microphone and smashed it on Yuan Xin's head. Very hard, very fierce. Fortunately, Yuan Xin dodged quickly, and only a little skin was scratched. All the reporters present were in an uproar. Beasts that are worse than pigs and dogs. Mr. Lu scolded. Although I don't want to reveal our dirty linen, I can't ignore my conscience. When you were with Yuan, you were still in a relationship with Hua Jingjing. You cheated on her, and the entire Lu family knows about it. Are you trying to deny it? Dream on. I don't want to appear on the news, and I don't want to seek justice for my daughter. She wasn't wronged. She deserved it. Father Lu said emotionally. But when it comes to Hua Jingjing, the two of us need to say a few words. Over the past few days, the news has been blowing up. From this moment, we finally found out that Hua Jingjing had suffered so much and was tortured by an animal. Because of this, my wife and I felt uneasy for many days. Coincidentally, that animal, Yuan Xin, came looking for us. Right now, I want to tell everyone that my daughter's death has nothing to do with Hua Jingjing. While my daughter was cheating with this animal, she was also involved with a hotel owner. Because the owner's wife found out, she ended up like this. We only found out about this a few years later. At that time, we even called the police. In the end, the matter was left unsettled. I don't care if Yuan Xin, this bastard, really misunderstood that Jingjing hired a hitman to kill my daughter, or if he's just trying to scheme against Jingjing. We, the old couple, will now announce the truth. I only hope that Jingjing can escape from the sea of bitterness as soon as possible. I also hope that the heavens will bless the good and let those scum be punished. No, even going to hell won't be enough to wash away their sins. The truth was finally revealed. It was told by Lu Yuowen's parents. Regarding Yuan Xin's affair and Lu Yuowen's murder, the couple didn't care about their face and innocence anymore. They didn't want to hurt other people. Yuan Xin was dumbfounded. In the past, what Jingjing had repeatedly explained to him, but he had never listened to her. He had a deep-rooted belief that Hua Jingjing was the culprit. She had killed the person he loved the most. It was because of this obsession that he continued to torture Hua Jingjing. But now, Lu Yuowen's parents were telling him that the culprit was someone else and that Lu Yuowen had another man. So what Hua Jingjing said was true, however. Every time Hua Jingjing said this, he would kick and punch her. How could this be? How could this be? Was Hua Jingjing really innocent? Yet, he had tortured Hua Jingjing for so many years, and he had tortured her so viciously. Yuan Xin, who was still being interviewed, knelt on the ground helplessly. Apart from shock, his expression was filled with regret. Inside the hospital room, Hua Jingjing's eyes were empty as she watched the scene unfold. Tongning ran over and hugged her as she gently comforted her. Now that the truth has been revealed, You can start anew. After so many years of injustice, Hua Jingjing cried and laughed at the same time. She then released all the pain in her heart. I'm free. In that case, hurry and adjust yourself. At the Super Queen Awards ceremony, you will still be the Super Queen. You also need to catch up. That day, Tongning was happier than if she had received an important endorsement. So, as she returned home to prepare dinner for Imo Ting, the corners of her lips curved upwards. That evening, Imo Ting returned home. As soon as he saw Tongning in the kitchen, he couldn't help but run over and hug her. You made such a sumptuous meal. Are you celebrating? Ting, you sure created this illusion well. What happened to Hua Jingjing is the truth. I didn't create an illusion, Imo Ting replied. Tongning turned around and looked at Imo Ting in shock. She then smiled. That's even better. Imo Ting wrapped his arms around Tongning's waist and placed her on the countertop. But I'm not good. How many days have you neglected me? I didn't neglect you. You're lying. Imo Ting bit Tongning on the lip. In that case, how do you plan to punish me? Tongning stretched out her arms and hooked them around Imo Ting's neck. Chapter 233. Imo Ting lowered his head and pressed the tip of his nose against Tongning's. During the day, I am your manager. I enslave you to work. At night, I am your husband. My job is to make sure you can't get out of bed. Come, let go of me. Imo Ting loosened his grip on Tongning's arm and turned off the stove. He then carried her into the bedroom and placed her on the bed. Mrs. Imo, you've become more and more naughty. After speaking, Imo Ting's palms began to wander. It didn't take long before his hands came into contact with Tongning's thighs. However, Tongning subconsciously shrank back. Imo Ting sat up curiously and looked at her knees. He noticed there were bruises on her fair skin. What happened? My foot slipped in the bathroom. Imo Ting got up and found the first aid kit to apply some medicine. Afterwards, he did not touch Tongning again. Instead, he coaxed her to sleep after dinner. That night, Tongning felt uneasy and her body was cold. When she woke up, she realized there was no one beside her and the bathroom lights were still on. Tongning got out of bed and tiptoed over. She noticed Imo Ting had pulled out a non-slip carpet from the cupboard and was laying it out neatly on the floor. He wasn't supposed to do these things, but because he had something in his heart, he couldn't let it go. It seemed she had to be touched like this every day. So, Tongning approached Imo Ting from behind. While he was squatting down, she leaned on his back. Stop laying it out. My heart hurts. Imo Ting paused and straightened his back. Without saying a word, he carried Tongning out of the bathroom. However, the next morning, as Tongning woke up, she noticed the bathroom was covered with a thick, non-slip carpet. Tongning stood in the doorway and laughed so hard that tears almost came out of her eyes. While the various versions of Yuan Xin's interview were being released, the promotion for Super Queen had already begun. At this year's awards ceremony, Hua Jingjing was one of the favorites to receive an award. Hai Rui also confirmed that Hua Jingjing would be attending. This was the first time Hua Jingjing had appeared in front of the public since her scandal. Everyone was worried about her mental state and were waiting for her to accept an interview after the awards ceremony. However, the media did not expect that Tongning would also be attending the awards ceremony, even though she would only be a guest. But the industry was already talking about her and Hua Jingjing's deep friendship. So, there were rumors that Tongning was attending to cheer for Hua Jingjing. Actually, it wasn't wrong, but it was also wrong. After all, Tongning had no idea what Imo Ting was planning to do at the awards ceremony. In the CEO's office of Hai Rui Entertainment, Fang Yu looked at the article that Imo Ting had asked him to release. His expression was a little shocked. President Imo, are you planning to let everyone know? You are Tongning's manager? Will this be a little too much? Fang Yu did not dare to finish his sentence. After all, for an almighty president to become a manager was already lowering his status. Not to mention whether the other higher-ups would agree. Wouldn't it blow up the entertainment industry? What? Do you think it will be difficult to announce this news? Ting lifted his head and asked Fang Yu, President, if you place Tongning on such a high pedestal, she will only be targeted by more people. Fang Yu was worried about Tongning's safety. After all, Ting was personally acting as her manager. How much jealousy would there be? Plus, the public will definitely have their own suspicions about your relationship. In fact, they may even deny all of Tongning's hard work. As for the Backview Dream Man from before, I think you should reconsider your decision. Tongning no longer needs to prove her professionalism. She already has enough work to represent the industry. It's only a matter of time before she reaches the pinnacle. My aim is to clear her path and let everyone know that she has the ability and background to back her up. As for your worries, how many people in the entertainment industry would dare to spread rumors about me? They will simply feel shocked, mysterious, unbelievable, and curious about our relationship. Ting rarely explained things to his subordinates. It was rare for Ting to explain things in such detail to his subordinates. As they slowly uncover the truth, Tongning will be completely immersed in the mysteries. In other words, Tongning would no longer be on a level that the small fries below her could reach. Fang Yu understood what Ting meant and was surprised at how much Ting cared about Tongning. In the entire entertainment industry, there wasn't another person like him. So, Fang Yu held onto the script in his hand and smiled, President, you treat Tongning too well. Ting swiveled in his chair and raised his hand to reveal his wedding ring. She is my wife. I want to give her happiness. Fang Yu nodded his head. When it came to Tongning, he had nothing but respect. Don't worry, I will handle this matter well. When the news is released, the entire entertainment industry will be shaken. Fang Yu was actually a little excited. It was like an ancient immortal had accepted a unique disciple. But the most exciting thing was, Ting's master and disciple were husband and wife. Tongning had no idea what Ting was planning. On the eve of the awards ceremony, she was still on the phone with Hua Jingjing. By now, the two had completely become best friends and practically kept a record of their conversations. You and she knelt outside my house for an entire night, Hua Jingjing said as she waited for the makeup artist to put on her makeup. You won't go soft on him again, will you? Tongning was also in the wardrobe picking out a dress. After 10 years of nightmares, I finally learned my lesson. Did you think I wouldn't learn my lesson? Hua Jingjing giggled. Perhaps I've already lost all feelings for the jerk. All these years, I've been struggling with the injustice I've suffered. Now that the truth has been revealed, I will naturally let it go. That's good. Then let him kneel. Shall we walk the red carpet together tonight? Tongning smiled and replied, I also have a responsibility to protect you from the media. Hearing Tongning's response, Hua Jingjing put down her phone and asked her assistant, Is the jerk still downstairs? Uh-huh. The assistant nodded. He's still kneeling and he keeps slapping himself in the face. Hua Jie, you can't forgive him this time. Forgive? Hua Jingjing repeated this word over and over again. Looking at the scars on her face that no amount of makeup could hide, she felt it was ridiculous. From now on, the word forgive is not in my dictionary. I am an international supermodel. What kind of trash is he? Forgive? He must have the right to do so. As soon as her assistant heard this, she smiled. That's right. Our Jingjing is also an international supermodel. From now on, what man can she not get? I hope all the jerks in the world will run away and die somewhere else. Sooner or later, they will be struck by lightning and receive their retribution. Chapter 234. Countless camera flashes and a bright red carpet. This was the venue of the Super Queen Awards ceremony. This was also the second time Tongning had attended a large-scale awards ceremony since announcing her comeback. The first time she attended was the annual Model Awards. At that time, she she received the Special Contribution Award. As for today's Super Queen Awards, she was simply attending as a guest to get to know the seniors of the modeling industry. As Hua Jingjing was supposed to be the star of the show, Tongning subconsciously dressed up a little as she left the house. But Mo Ting had already instructed Long Jie to prepare a dress for her. She wore a bat-sleeve jacket, an irregularly pleated skirt, and a pair of gold heels adorned with butterflies. It was almost like he wanted Tongning to appear mysterious and retro. The couple sat in a van. Hua Jingjing looked at Tongning and couldn't help but comment, "Your outfit is a little different from your usual style." "My manager insisted." Tongning replied, "It does look good. He has good taste." Hua Jingjing complimented. Tongning laughed it off, not wanting to dwell on the issue any longer. Mo Ting was the one who prepared all the clothes. Even if it was a piece of jewelry, he had to know everything. Tongning had a feeling that today's awards ceremony would be a little different. It didn't take long before the couple arrived at the venue. As they sat in the van, they could see many of the biggest names in the fashion industry walking down the red carpet. Amongst them were many singers and actors that had been invited to perform. This was a testament to the power and influence of Super Queen. "Oh God, friends, I can already see Hua Jingjing stepping out of the car. Accompanying her is Tongning, who has just signed with Hai Rui." Hearing the host's voice, Long Jie was the first to step out of the car. She then opened the car door and welcomed Hua Jingjing out. However, before Tongning could step out of the car, a scream could be heard from outside. It wasn't a scream of joy, it was a scream of surprise. Even Long Jie and Hua Jingjing did not expect Yuanxin to leap over the railings and kneel down in front of Hua Jingjing. Everyone was shocked, but at the same time, they began to take pictures of the couple. This was big news. Did this jerk of a man come back to beg Hua Jingjing to change her mind? How shameless did he have to be to do something like this? Everyone was in an uproar. Meanwhile, Tongning sat in the car and did not step out. She knew Hua Jingjing still needed some time. Hua Jingjing wore a long silver dress that wrapped around her slender figure. Her long wavy hair was tightly attached to her back. She wore exquisite makeup, and in order to accentuate her skin tone, she even applied a bright lip color. But in front of such a goddess, there was a scumbag man kneeling. She no longer cared about her dignity as she knelt in front of Hua Jingjing and grabbed onto the corner of her skirt. "Jingjing, can you forgive me? I know I was wrong. I've been a beast for more than 10 years. Hua Jingjing lowered her head at first, but after a few seconds, she raised her head again and said coldly, "Get up. You forgive me? I simply hope that you will never appear in front of me. I, Hua Jingjing, am an international supermodel. There are hundreds of millions of people in this world that admire and protect me. Who do you think you are?" Hua Jingjing laughed. "If I could do it all over again, I hope I could erase a stain like you, even if I have to go to the 18th level of hell. From now on, focus on loving your Lu Yuewen. She is the one that truly loves you. As for me, I really don't want to be tangled with you anymore. I have a better life ahead of me. I don't want to waste another second on you." After speaking, Hua Jingjing pushed Yuanxin away and helped Tongning out of the car. The sisters looked at Yuanxin. As Hua Jingjing walked away, she said to Yuanxin, "If you continue to harass me, I will have no choice but to take legal action. Yuanxin, don't make me feel even more disgusted by you." The entire media witnessed Hua Jingjing acting like a queen as she walked past Yuanxin. She was implying that from now on, she would never foolishly give her all to a jerk. Seeing this scene, the host gave Hua Jingjing a thumbs up. This was the type of attitude a woman should have. If there was something unworthy of lingering on, she should kick it away and make it disappear from her sight. "Oh God, you are so cool." Our Hua Jingjing and Tongning, who are attending as guests, saw the two of you holding hands and thought you were a couple. "It's obvious the two of you have a great relationship. Let's invite the two of you to leave your names on the wall." Behind them, Yuanxin was still kneeling at the front of the red carpet. However, Hua Jingjing did not look back. She was an almighty international supermodel. Why would she stay for a jerk like him? "Jingjing, I love you. Be my wife." Amongst the crowd, many of Hua Jingjing's male fans shouted out. Hua Jingjing looked at her fans and generously blew them a kiss. Seeing Hua Jingjing in high spirits, Tongning let out a sigh of relief. Everyone had been worried for nothing. The lively Hua Jingjing had transformed from a chrysalis into a butterfly. She was even more dazzling and confident. Entering the venue, most of the models and guests had already arrived. However, Tongning and Hua Jingjing were not seated next to each other. Beside Tongning sat Qin Yu and the people from Star King. The two had already formed a grudge because of EQ. Now that they met again, there was no need to be polite and say hello. However, at the awards ceremony, Qin Yu won a few awards and kept walking past Tongning on purpose. In the end, Qin Yu placed the trophy in front of Tongning and asked, "I'm giving you one. Do you want it?" Tongning did not respond as she stared straight ahead. Hua Jingjing is the one receiving an award today. Why did you appear? How strange. Tongning, it doesn't feel good being suppressed by Hua Jingjing, does it? You're the one that doesn't feel good. Tongning couldn't help but ask. If you can't even beat a newbie like me, how are you going to beat Hua Jingjing? Why do I feel like you are like Hua Jingjing's follower? Do you listen to whatever she says? If you are capable, then beat us on the runway. Otherwise, everything you say will be meaningless. Beat you? That's easy. I have plenty of trophies in my hands. But, what do you have to offer? Qin Yu smiled in ridicule. However, I am quite surprised that Hua Jingjing is here. After all, she has just been dumped by a man. Plus, I almost forgot. You have also been dumped by a man. So, the two of you must appreciate each other. You are both the same. You were ridden on and then dumped. Chapter 235. Qin Yu thought, even if Tongning didn't lose her composure in anger, she would at least be upset. But Tongning simply closed her eyes and told Qin Yu, "There's no point in talking back to me." When it came to self-control, apart from her own husband, Tongning had never met anyone that was better than her. Of course, she wouldn't do something like falling into someone else's trap just because she was distracted. Qin Yu let out a laugh. She suddenly felt she had underestimated Tongning. Hey, here's another award for you. Miss World's top 10 most beautiful breasts. Qin Yu received 3 to 4 awards, but none of them were important. The important awards were all in the hands of Hua Jingjing and the others. The first-ranked model was another national treasure of Hai Rui. Not only was she a supermodel, she also created her own clothing brand at a young age. She had always been at the top of the fashion industry and rarely made an appearance at events like this. Even Hua Jingjing didn't see her often. In second place was a representative from Star King. Of course, Hua Jingjing was in third place. This ranking was a testament to the amount of money these models made. In terms of the domestic market, they were at the top of the pyramid. Tongning sat quietly below the stage as she watched Hua Jingjing walk onto the stage. As she held onto the trophy, she felt happy for her. At this time, Hua Jingjing, who was standing on the stage, glanced in Tongning's direction as she gave her speech. Their eyes met and the smile on their faces said it all. As everyone knows, a few days ago, I was on the brink of collapse. But one person pulled me back from the brink of destruction. This person was Tongning, who is sitting below the stage right now. As Hua Jingjing spoke, tears suddenly rolled down her cheeks. I'm not sure if anyone has ever been warmed by someone before. Before I met Tongning, I never had. Throughout the long years of darkness, the word that crossed my mind the most was death. But Tongning brought me back to life. She told me to persevere a little longer. Because I persevered, I am once again standing on the stage. I feel she is a great person. As long as she recognizes someone as a friend, no matter the consequences, she is willing to stand out and take an arrow for them. How lucky I am to have met her. Lastly, I would like to thank my family, Hai Rui, and all my brothers and sisters. Lastly, I would like to thank myself. In the future, I will make my life more exciting. I will live with more meaning. Because only now do I realize that I'm living like a human. After hearing Hua Jingjing's words and seeing her kiss the trophy, Tongning led the crowd in a round of applause. Soon, the entire ceremony erupted in applause. As long as a person has faith, no one and nothing can stop her from being reborn. After listening to Jingjing's words, I feel a lot of emotions. Since Tongning is here today, can we invite Tongning and Jingjing to perform for us? Let's sing a song together. Are you looking forward to it? The host asked the audience excitedly. What responded to her was, of course, a warm round of applause. The host chuckled. Seeing both Hua Jingjing and Tongning nod their heads, he replied, "Okay, let's continue with the awards ceremony. Tell them to go get ready." In reality, Tongning had already been notified beforehand that she would be performing with Hua Jingjing. Although singing wasn't her forte, since it was to celebrate Hua Jingjing's rebirth, it wasn't a big deal to let loose for once. Hua Jingjing was the winner of a popular award, while Tongning had always been a hot topic in the modeling industry. Tonight, the two walked the path of warm sisters, so naturally, they attracted a lot of attention. As a result, the people from Star King were left out in the cold, especially after hearing that the two would be singing a duet. Qinyu, who was sitting beside Tongning, looked at her with a deep gaze. So, while Tongning and Hua Jingjing were preparing backstage, Qinyu disappeared from her seat. After quite some time, she finally returned to her seat. Not long after, the ceremony reached its climax. Tongning and Hua Jingjing appeared on stage at the same time. They each held a microphone in their hands, and each occupied an important side. One was black and the other silver. The spotlight shone on the two. Under the watchful eyes of the audience, a soothing tune began to play as they sang the song Lost. No one expected that Hua Jingjing's singing voice would be a little hoarse and mellow. On the other hand, Tongning's voice was clean and calm, but it also had an explosive power to it. They were professional models, but they could still sing. Lu Che was watching the live broadcast in his office. As soon as he heard Tongning sing, he excitedly ran over to Emoting's office and helped him turn on the television. On the screen, the two silhouettes were dazzling and stunning. As for their voices, Emoting was shocked. This was also the first time Emoting had heard Tongning sing. She was such a quiet person. Who would have thought she could sing so well? "President, from now on, if the madam doesn't want to walk the runway anymore, we can release an album," Lu Che suggested.
No.
Emoting rejected. "From now on, only I will be able to listen to her sing. This time, these people will be lucky." Lu Che. Emoting smiled as he closed the document in his hands. "Notify Feng Yu that it's about time to release the news." "Understood." Lu Che nodded as he turned to leave. Emoting supported himself with one hand on his desk as he watched Tongning and Hua Jingjing sing on the screen. Their mesmerizing voices and rich emotions were indeed moving. Emoting suddenly let out a gentle laugh. It couldn't be that after this song, someone would actually want to release an album for his wife, right? At the awards ceremony, the duo's performance stunned everyone and won a round of applause. Tongning and Hua Jingjing looked at each other. After the lights changed, they walked to the center of the stage to give their thanks. However, at this time, a man wearing a baseball cap suddenly rushed onto the stage and threw himself at Tongning. Tongning was originally standing at the edge of the stage. With this throw, she rolled off the stage. The accident happened too suddenly, causing the entire venue to be in an uproar. As for the man wearing the baseball cap, he quickly jumped off the stage and ran towards the last place where the fans were gathered. The security guards quickly chased after him. Hua Jingjing also jumped off the stage to check on Tongning. But all she found was Tongning lying motionless on the floor. Tongning. Tongning. Tongning took a few seconds to regain her senses. With the help of a group of people, she sat down on one of the guest chairs. "Are you okay?" Hua Jingjing asked anxiously. Tongning shook her head. In reality, the thing she was most afraid of was being seen by Emoting. Seeing Tongning with her hands on her knees, Hua Jingjing was obviously in disbelief. She stood up to call an ambulance, but Tongning held her back. "Don't make a scene. Let's catch the culprit first. I'm really okay." Chapter 236. How could you say you're fine? Hua Jingjing looked at the 1-meter-high stage and remembered Tongning had just rolled down. She quickly grabbed her arm to check. You must have been on the news. Did you really think no one could see it? Hua Jingjing understood Tongning's concerns, so she replaced Mo Ting with someone else. However, Tongning simply smiled and explained. Luckily, there was a carpet underneath. The host of the awards ceremony also approached and helped Tongning up. Can you still walk? Do you need to go to the hospital? Tongning shook her head. In reality, the pain was only obvious at the moment she was pushed down. But when she rolled down, she didn't feel much. Okay, get some rest. If you need anything, let us know. The host comforted. Don't force yourself. After speaking, the host returned to the stage to cover up the awkward scene from before. The atmosphere quickly returned to normal, and the awards ceremony continued. However, news of Tongning's fall still quickly leaked out. The security guards dragged back the man in the baseball cap. He was a 17 to 18-year-old teenager with pimples on his face and a rebellious appearance. He said he is a loyal fan of yours. He likes you so much that he lost control for a moment. Long Jie relayed what the security guards said to Tongning. He's just a kid. Plus, you're fine. So the security guards didn't want to make things difficult for him. They simply taught him a lesson and let him go. Do you believe him? Hua Jingjing asked as she scanned the crowd. Tongning shook her head, but she still had a sense of balance in her heart. At least, she was able to pinpoint the culprit. Star King definitely has something to do with it, but we have no evidence. In that case, we'll just have to endure it for now, Tongning replied calmly in a soft voice. Hua Jingjing may not have realized, but Long Jie was well aware that Tongning was patiently enduring. She wasn't going to let this go so easily. Do you want to leave first? No need. You still have an award to attend. I'll get Long Jie to help me back to my seat. Tongning endured the pain as she stood up. Her legs were a little unsteady. Hua Jingjing quickly held onto her and yelled, Are you stupid? How dare you try to be brave? I'm not trying to be brave. This was because she remembered she had slipped in the bathroom and Mo Ting had spent the entire night laying down a non-slip carpet. If she returned home early, Mo Ting would be even more worried. Mo Ting likes to make a big deal out of nothing. Hua Jingjing froze for a moment before reacting. Tongning did this because she didn't want Mo Ting to worry too much. I really don't know what to do with you. Not long after, Tongning returned to her seat. Everyone around her expressed their concern, regardless of whether they knew her or not. Qin Yu was the only exception. As soon as Tongning returned to her seat, her sharp senses noticed the smile on Qin Yu's face. Whether she did it on purpose or not, this smile had taken root in Tongning's heart. Her principle had always been revenge. If Star King really had something to do with this incident, she would definitely make them pay. Rue Entertainment. Fang Yu was just about to release a press release when he heard from the reporters at the scene that Tongning had been in an accident. She had been pushed off the stage and rolled off the stage. Fang Yu immediately headed over to the CEO's office. However, he found Mo Ting sitting gloomily in his office chair. The coldness emanating from his body made one's breathing speed up. President, do you still want to release the press release? After I get out of here, I'll release it. Mo Ting signed the last document and handed it to Fang Yu before grabbing his jacket and entering the elevator. At this time, Fang Yu noticed Mo Ting's signature had never been so sloppy before. In fact, there were even traces of alterations. From this, it was clear to see how angry he was and how much he had to endure it. The only reason he did not explode on the spot was because he knew Tongning was trying her best to hold it in. He was worried, but Tongning didn't want him to worry too much. This was obvious from Tongning's series of reactions. It was best if he didn't find out who was pulling the strings behind the scenes. Otherwise, once this bottom line was crossed, it wouldn't be so easy to get over it. Meanwhile, during a break in the awards ceremony, Hua Jingjing was sitting in the bathroom cubicle when she overheard a few female artists discussing Tongning's fall. Of course, the industry had always been one to step on the weak and support the strong. Especially after seeing Tongning's current development, they couldn't help but feel jealous. Who did this? Have you guys received any information? No matter who did it, they did a good job, didn't they? Let me tell you a secret. Someone just saw Star King's Qin Yu leave the set. I'm not sure what she was doing sneakily. You saw her? My assistant saw her. Sure, keep your voices down. This is a battle between Star King and Hai Rue. It's best we don't get involved. All they heard was a loud bang as Hua Jingjing pushed open the cubicle door and walked out. As soon as the models saw Hua Jingjing, their expressions changed. They quickly lowered their heads and grabbed their handbags before disappearing from the gossip. However, Hua Jingjing chased after them and asked, "Whose assistant saw you?" The women's expressions did not look good as they lowered their heads and pretended they hadn't said anything. But who was Hua Jingjing? She revealed a cold smile as she said to the women, "How dare you offend Hai Rue? Do you still think you can survive in this industry?" The women froze for a moment. After weighing their options, they finally told Hua Jingjing everything they had heard. They also told her about one of their assistants who saw Qin Yu leave the set to look for her manager. Hua Jingjing closed her eyes and suppressed the pain in her chest. She put on a smile and walked over to Tongning's seat. "The culprit has been found." Tongning looked at Hua Jingjing in surprise. Hua Jingjing winked at her and pointed her chin towards Qin Yu. Tongning reacted and added, "Who is it? I've already reported this matter to President Imo. This matter can be light or heavy. You almost lost your life." So, President Imo said he wants Star King to give him an explanation. If they can't give him an explanation, they will completely blacklist her and make sure she no longer has a foothold in the industry. Hua Jingjing deliberately raised her voice. "Isn't that right, Miss Qin?" Qin Yu was a little flustered as she stuttered. How would I know? Someone's assistant saw her. Are you sure you don't know?" Qin Yu analyzed the situation in front of her and felt Hua Jingjing's words weren't trustworthy. So, she calmed down a little. "What did you see? Do you have any evidence?" Chapter 237. Hua Jingjing had been in the industry for over 10 years. She had seen plenty of people like Qin Yu. So, she secretly kicked Qin Yu in the leg with the sharp tip of her shoe. Qin Yu did not expect Hua Jingjing to kick her. She let out a cry of pain as she stood up and called out Hua Jingjing's name. It didn't take long for the host to notice the commotion below the stage. He quickly reminded the director to avoid the cameras and not let it affect the final broadcast. "Hua Jingjing, are you crazy? Don't go overboard." Qin Yu couldn't control her emotions as she yelled out in a high-pitched voice. It didn't take long before she attracted the attention of everyone. At this time, Hua Jingjing did something even more unbelievable. She stood up and threw a slap across Qin Yu's face. Plenty of people on set saw this. Hua Jingjing had hit Qin Yu. "How dare you hit me?" Qin Yu held her cheek as she stared at Hua Jingjing in disbelief. However, after throwing the slap across her face, Hua Jingjing quietly sat back down without giving an explanation. This made people assume a small character like Qin Yu was asking for a slap in front of a supermodel with her international status. So what if she gave you a slap across the face? If you didn't ask for a slap, would she even bother with you? Who are you? Above all, Qin Yu had just called Hua Jingjing crazy in front of so many people. With her level of EQ and IQ, she deserved to be hit. The host and the staff were afraid the situation would get out of hand, so they quickly stepped forward to stop it. However, Qin Yu pushed them away. She had no intention of letting the incident pass. Hua Jingjing, Tongning is just a third-rate model. Is she worth your protection? Try saying Tongning is a third-rate model again. Hua Jingjing scolded. Qin Yu was in a difficult position. The situation had already gotten out of hand. If she admitted defeat now, how would the people on set look at her and Star King? So, Qin Yu gathered her courage and replied, "I said Tongning is a third-rate model. A third-rate model. Do you understand? So what if she joined Hai Rue? It doesn't change the fact that she was previously blacklisted by Star King. Plus, isn't she just a foil? Isn't she trying her best to curry favor with you so she can climb up the ladder? Don't misunderstand. If you still treat her like a treasure, she might turn around and sell you out. The three of them were seated on the right side of the third row. It was a relatively hidden spot, but there were still plenty of people that heard Qin use mockery towards Tongning. Although I don't know how Tongning managed to get into Hairue, don't forget, the CEO of Hairue hates it when people play tricks. I can't wait to see how Tongning dies. Death? Tongning stared coldly at Qin the entire time. Her gaze was cold and contained a hint of ridicule. However, just as Qin was about to mock Tongning, Hairue had already released a statement. Many of the artists present were bored, so they swiped through their phones and saw the news. They were so shocked that they covered their mouths. Tongning, don't you agree? Qin was still verbally attacking Tongning when an unknown woman on her right leaned on her arm and said, "Don't worry about me. Miss Qin, I don't think you should continue. Do you know who Tongning's manager is?" Qin turned her head and glanced at the woman. The disgust in her eyes was clear as day. The woman looked innocent as she reminded, "Do whatever you want. If you don't want to listen, then forget it. I simply think it's quite funny." Qin didn't understand what the woman meant. At this time, everyone below the stage was whispering amongst themselves. Because this news was simply too shocking, no one could have imagined it. This is so surprising. Hairue just released an announcement. CEO Emoting has actually become Tongning's personal manager. Personal. Most importantly, this person is Emoting, the mysterious and terrifying king of entertainment. I'm so envious of Tongning. How did she do it? For the CEO to personally make an appearance, Tongning must have something special about her. It's good to think about it, Sue. I also want the CEO to be my manager. No matter how slow Qin was, there was no way she wouldn't know what had happened. So, she leaned over and grabbed the phone from one of the guests beside her. As soon as she saw the announcement from Hairue, her face turned pale. Hua Jingjing had also seen the news. She held up her phone and asked Qin, "This is the so-called third-rate model that you were talking about." Yet, she managed to get the king of entertainment to be her manager, and it's his personal. Some people may be done for. Qin, you were the one behind the incident on stage, weren't you? As Tongning's manager, how do you think Emoting will handle this matter? I can confidently tell you that President Mo's methods kill without spilling blood. Qin breathing quickened as she glanced at Tongning and slumped into her chair. In reality, when Tongning first found out about this news, she was also shocked and surprised. Although Emoting had previously given her a boost of confidence, she never expected Emoting would use this opportunity to reveal his identity as a manager. "Hey, look at that bitch's expression," what Jingjing reminded. Tongning let out a laugh as she relaxed. So what if he announced it? After all, it was the truth. "I never thought President Emo would dote on you so much that he would personally become your manager. Did you know about this beforehand?" "I knew. I just never expected he would reveal it." Tongning was a little nervous and helpless. She was afraid Hua Jingjing would have a different opinion of her. That's good too. With President Mo's protection, I'm sure those bad people won't dare to get close to you again, Hua Jingjing said generously. Perhaps it was because she was older than Tongning. She subconsciously acted like she was Tongning's older sister. She felt guilty for not being able to help Tongning vent her anger on the stage. But now that Emoting had revealed himself as Tongning's manager, this was equivalent to sending Tongning to new heights. At least, from now on, those that wanted to bully her would have to think twice about whether they could afford to offend Emoting. So, the news that Hairue announced immediately became a hot topic. Emoting had become Tongning's personal manager. Regarding such a heavy bomb, the outside world spread all sorts of rumors because it was simply too surprising, too shocking. With Tongning's background, who would dare to compete with her in terms of resources? This was Emoting they were talking about. Regardless of whether they could compete with him or not, they still needed to have the guts to. Chapter 238. Overnight, the way everyone looked at Tongning had changed. Envy, jealousy, Jealousy and unwillingness filled their eyes. Everyone surrounded Tongning, pointing fingers and whispering amongst themselves. However, no one dared to step forward and challenge Tongning. This was because Tongning had already been branded with Emoting's name. If someone didn't want to continue in the industry, they could try challenging Emoting's authority. Tongning subconsciously furrowed her brows. Hua Jingjing noticed and asked, "This is something you must endure. You need to endure it." "I need some time to get used to it," Tongning replied. "Plus, when it comes to the future, I still have a lot of uncertainties. I believe the two of you can definitely move forward hand in hand." Tongning nodded her head. At this time, the awards ceremony was nearing its end. Qinyu was afraid that Emoting would get back at her, so she left with a guilty conscience. However, Hua Jingjing held her back. "Miss Qin, are you leaving already? Are you afraid that President Imo will get back at you?" Qin Yu's face turned red and white. She wanted to leave, but not only did Hua Jingjing not let her go, she even approached her and held her back. "Let's go together." Tongning lowered her head and laughed. As she stood up from her seat, she felt a little dizzy. It seemed she still had some lingering effects from the moment she fell off the stage. Hua Jingjing turned around and glanced at her. After confirming that she was fine, she calmly walked in front. The group left in an orderly manner. However, the focus of the media was on Tongning. As soon as she appeared, the reporters immediately swarmed towards her. "Miss Tang, can you answer a few of our questions? Miss Tang, can you tell us why President Imo wants to sign you as his artist? Miss Tang, President Imo is so busy. Does he really have time to be your manager?" Hearing these questions, Tongning couldn't help but laugh. She knew these weren't the questions the media wanted to ask. What they wanted to know was why the almighty CEO, the big boss of the entertainment industry, would be the manager of a model like her. What was her relationship with Emoting? Was there some sort of dirty deal between them? But because no one dared to spread rumors about Emoting, the reporters had a hard time holding back their questions. They didn't dare to ask too harsh of a question, so they could only wait and see if Tongning would keep her mouth shut and reveal anything. As there were too many reporters, the road was completely blocked. So, Long Jie and Hua Jingjing's assistant quickly rushed over to help. Long Jie stood in front of Tongning and said to the media, "Tongning isn't feeling well today. I hope the media can be merciful." With this reminder, the media finally remembered that Tongning had fallen on stage earlier today. However, the media did not let Tongning off the hook. Tongning never liked to be interviewed. If they missed this opportunity, who knew when they would get another one? So, there was no way they were going to interview Emoting. "Tongning, please satisfy the media. We are just trying to make a living." "Yeah, you should respond to the doubts of the outside world." Hearing the word doubt, Tongning smiled and asked, "What did the public doubt?" The reporter froze for a moment before replying, "We all want to know why the almighty CEO of Hai Rue would be the manager of a model. We are all shocked." "If that's the question, then you should be asking him, not me," Tongning said as she tried to explain. In reality, her waist was sore and she was wearing high heels, so if she stood for too long, it would hurt. "In that case, are you President Mo's mistress?" The reporters began to ask more daring questions. Tongning let out a laugh and shook her head. "Of course not. She was simply his wife." "In that case, have you known President Mo for a long time?" "I don't think there's any point in telling you this." Tongning maintained her smile as she replied in a watertight manner. "What are you pretending for? Isn't she just a prostitute who slept with him until the end?" Someone in the crowd suddenly mocked. Everyone turned to look at the man. At this time, the man in his early 20s couldn't help but laugh. "What are you looking at? Do you think I'm joking? Let me tell you, I actually have evidence in my hands." As Tongning looked at the man, she also noticed his name tag, Huarong Studio. It seemed this studio was like a ghost that refused to leave. It seemed the so-called editor Lin had found a bunch of small fries. Tongning also had no idea that Huarong had previously captured her and Emoting being intimate at the manor. It was just that they hadn't revealed their trump card yet. "Are you crazy? Are you trying to gain attention?" The other reporters began to curse. "Tongning is a bitch. I'm going to throw it all out there. One day, you will all believe what I say." Hasn't she said enough? You still need to believe her. In the past, she said she doesn't have a boyfriend, yet she's actually dated a few big shots. You just don't know. Hearing this slander, Long Jie was immediately angered. She pointed at the man and said, "If you have the guts, why don't you repeat what you just said one more time? Even if you have emoting backing you, I'm not afraid," the man sneered. "Just wait until we've sorted out the evidence. It will definitely shock me. Falling on stage? Did you really think they were your hardcore fans? Did they just find you an eyesore and wanted to mess with you? I hate women that appear innocent on the surface, but are actually dirtier than everyone else." Qin Yu was left to the side to watch the show. She suddenly felt this reporter was quite interesting. Perhaps she could learn a lot of information about Tongning from him? "Watch your mouth," Long Jie warned angrily. "Watch my mouth." "Sure, but you have to make sure you do everything cleanly. You are already suspicious. How come President Mo didn't want to be anyone else's manager and chose to be Tongning's personal manager? Also, the back you saw earlier." In reality, the question that the male reporter asked was exactly what everyone wanted to know. However, they didn't dare to ask Tongning directly. After all, Tongning was no longer the same as before. Tongning stood there for a few minutes. Her back was in so much pain that she took a step back. Long Jie could feel it, so she immediately contacted the organizers and asked for backup. At this time, a black Mercedes van arrived and stopped in front of the entrance. A moment later, Emoting stepped out of the van and approached Tongning amidst a series of screams. He didn't travel like he did himself. He didn't use a luxurious van. Instead, he used a van that suited Tongning's status. This proved that he was serious about being Tongning's manager and wasn't treating her like a mistress. The media immediately changed their target. However, they raised their microphones and did not dare to ask any questions. They were afraid of Emoting's gaze. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.